5 Live Formula One.
Hello and welcome to Singapore. We're under the lights here and about to get going for the Singapore Grand Prix, the 15th race of the 2023 Formula One season. Under the lights around this Marina Bay street circuit, 4.9 kilometres long, just over 3 miles and 62 laps ahead of us, at a slightly altered Marina Bay track as well, due to building work going on in the downtown Singapore area. We've cut out 4 corners, back when we used to head right towards the end of the lap and then cut back on ourselves underneath the grandstand. That's now gone and has been replaced by a 400-metre straight. It is tight, it is twisty, and in a record-breaking year for Formula One, for Max Verstappen and for Red Bull, well, the history book continues to write itself, and a roller coaster of absolute emotion going on yesterday in qualifying. Joining myself, Harry Benjamin, in the commentary box is a racing driver and a woman who stood on the podium at this very track, Alice Powell. The big story coming into this race, Alice, is that Max Verstappen, both Red Bulls, knocked out in Q2, did not progress through to the top 10. Verstappen will start this race from 11th, Sergio Perez in 13th.
Yeah, we wouldn't have predicted that, would we, coming into this weekend? Red Bull expected to struggle, but no way did they expect to struggle like they have, with Max, as you said, down in 11th and Sergio down in 13th. It's going to be a tough race, I think, for those two. They are in a tricky position on the grid. That's probably the worst place to qualify, in that mid-pack, because it really gets very congested. Doesn't matter which track you're racing at. We've seen incidents going down into Turn 1 before. It's obviously a tight corner as well. There is places, it was last year, didn't Max cut over Turn 1 to escape some contact, and somehow, I don't know how, managed to escape a penalty. So he might be looking to do that once again. He will be starting on the right side of the grid for that. So we'll see, but it is a shock, and I think we will, I don't want to jinx it, but I think we will get a new race winner this season. Well, also joining us in the commentary box is the BBC's chief F1 writer, Andrew Benson. And Andrew, what that has done is it's opened it right up, because Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari starts from pole position in front of George Russell and Charles Leclerc. We'll give you the full grid rundown just before lights out. But are we going to see the first non-Red Bull driver win a race since last year, Brazil?
Well, Harry, logic suggests so, right? Verstappen starts 11th. Overtaking's really difficult around Singapore. No one's won from that far back on the grid apart from Fernando Alonso, who was further back in 2008, and we all know what happened there with the Crashgate controversy. But think back to Miami. Verstappen started 10th, I think, was it? Went on the hard tyres at the start, ran a really, really long first stint, and it was probably his best race win this year. So,
but crucially, Alice, this is, I mean, Miami is also tight and twisty in parts, but this is more of a street circuit, I think we can say. So overtaking is more difficult, and you know, there just seems to be a little bit more of a buzz about the fact that it's not going to be quite the walkover, where, you know, we've seen Verstappen start not on pole this year, and we all presume, oh well, he'll come through, what lap is he going to take the lead? But there's a difference here. Yeah, their race pace does seem to be better compared to their one lap pace, but it's still going to be difficult, having raced actually on both Miami and Singapore. It's safe to say definitely Miami is easier to overtake, and this Singapore circuit does have more of a street circuit vibe. So it's going to be tough, and we saw that Max, even last year, struggled to come through the pack. I just wonder, because Max has been quite vocal, hasn't he, on the radio? At times he seems to have really shown across his frustration through the radio. So I wonder if he's down where he shouldn't be, and clearly has frustration, but he's got no pressure on him in terms of, you know, he needs to gain these places to win the championship. So I don't know why he's getting so annoyed. He's passionate and clearly wants to win, but I just wonder whether we might see Max get into a bit of trouble and a bit of contact. I don't know, something just tells me that he's
he seems quite frustrated this weekend.
Yeah, I think anything could happen with Verstappen, can't it? I think the frustration is coming from the competitiveness. They've obviously not got the car in the right setup window for qualifying, but the race is not qualifying. The problem that they had, they've been oscillating around different setups and struggling with grip, struggling with bouncing. They had the car run too low in qualifying. In the race, the car runs higher. It's counterintuitive because it's got fuel in it, but it's going slower because of tyre wear, so there's less downforce acting on it, so it runs higher. So the bottoming might not affect them so badly. So then the question is, can they get Verstappen into free air? That's what I was alluding to earlier with the hard tyre. If he starts on the hard and then waits for everyone to pit in front of him and then gets some clear air, where can that put him by the time he pits? I think that's, I'm guessing, but I would imagine that's the kind of race Red Bull might be thinking of having.
Strategy is a key element, especially here in Singapore, a track that has had a safety car intervention at every single race since its inaugural race back in 2008. But it's also a track that is a fan favourite, it's a driver's favourite. The cars look brilliant under the lights with the fantastic Singapore skyline overlooking it, and the drivers, Rosanna, are getting ready on the grid. Last minute discussions taking place with engineers.
Absolutely. Helmets are going on, Harry. They're just getting into the zone in these last few minutes before lights out. And you can probably hear the music blaring out over the start-finish straight. We've got a bit of Robbie Williams, Rock DJ going on. It's a real party atmosphere, but it's still incredibly hot and humid here. 29 degrees is the temperature, and it's 76% humidity. So you rest easy and cool in that commentary box. I'll be out here, don't you worry, soaking up the atmosphere and the sweat, of course. Look, I had a chat with Christian Horner earlier on. The big news, as we know, and you've already touched on, is that Red Bull failed to make it through into the top 10. Max starting from P11, Sergio behind him. I asked Christian how he's feeling heading into this sort of anomaly of a race.
You know, let's see. I mean, strategies are the only thing we got. I think we've got a good race car. I mean, let's see. I mean, you've got to get through the first lap. There's a few hard races around us, so it could be an exciting race.
I think we're going to enjoy it. Unfortunately, it looks like the Constructors' Championship is a little out of reach this weekend. You thought you might be able to clinch it. Does that weigh on your mind?
We need to finish first and second with Mercedes not scoring. I think even if we were starting first and second, it would be an improbability here. But look, statistically we've got no chance. But, hey, who believes in statistics?
Exactly. And just for the Red Bull fans listening, in a week's time we race in Japan. These problems aren't going to follow you there, are they?
Look, I hope not. I mean, we've lost one race since July last year. It's been a hell of a run. We've had an unbelievable run of success. And, we need to understand what's caused this today and address it from there.
You've got a bit of a buffer, I guess, Christian. Good luck today.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so that was Christian Horner there, the team principal of Red Bull, playing down their chances, saying they haven't got a chance. But statistics, well, do we believe them? Let's wait and see as the drivers begin to clamber into their cars and their last-minute protocols before getting into their cockpits. I mean, the past 10 races held on street circuits, Red Bull have won. But it wasn't all doom and gloom for Red Bull drivers, I suppose, because, at the expense of the reigning world champion Max Verstappen, Liam Lawson in the AlphaTauri managed to nick through into the top 10 as well, and only his third ever qualifying, which I think was one of the really nice stories to come out from yesterday, Alice.
Yeah, it was, and we did talk about yesterday. If you were listening yesterday, we said, well, Yuki did lock up. He probably would have gone in front of him, but Yuki locked up, didn't he? So, Liam didn't. End of story. So I think it was a great job by Liam to get the AlphaTauri up into P10. He starts ahead of Max Verstappen, as you said. So he's in a great position, and he's doing a really good job for a rookie.
Sorry, Alice, we'll go straight to Rosanna, who's with the team principal of Mercedes.
Thanks, Harry. Yeah, Toto Wolff, wow, this is an opportunity, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. There's no car really in front of his side. There's only one to the right.
And in terms of race pace, I guess you guys feel quite confident that you can hang on, at least the Ferraris, or even get a little pass made right at the start of the race.
Yeah, we were good on Friday, but there's no guarantee. We got to stay humble, and the car is hopefully good for a podium, and if there's more, we'll take it.
Seems like George is much more confident, maybe just around this track in the car. Is that a switch? Something's happened? He's feeling better in it now?
You got to have the confidence to drive well here, and he's one with the car. Lewis wasn't keen on how the car behaved. But everything to play for both.
Well, good luck.
Well, Toto Wolff and George Russell feeling bullish. The last non-Red Bull driver to win, Alice, was George Russell. Could he do it again?
I think he's got a good chance. If he can keep it clean off the line, he's got that extra set of medium tyres compared to those around him, then he's got a very good chance. And he's experienced winning a race. So has Sainz, so has Leclerc, so none of them new there. The only person that hasn't starting in those top 4 positions is Lando Norris, and I wouldn't rule him out either, because McLaren, they bought a load of upgrades this weekend that seems to be working really, really well at this circuit. So we'll have to wait and see, Harry, but a lot of things can come into play. There's been a safety car at every Singapore Grand Prix that's been held. So that can make a big difference. If you pit without a safety car, 29 seconds. But if you manage to get your luck right and you pit with a safety car, you can save, well, a lot of time, over 10 seconds. So that can play a big part as well.
There's also the two Hasses that are up in the top 10, particularly Kevin Magnussen with a great qualifying, starting from 6th on the grid. And he has said, I'm getting my elbows out. I'm going to defend and hold on to this position for as long as possible. And we know K-Mag can be a little bit feisty when it comes to his racing. So that might be one for Verstappen to watch out for, and anybody behind him. Fernando Alonso starts right behind him. But we are just moments away then from getting lights out here in Singapore, the 14th edition of this Singapore Grand Prix around the Marina Bay Street Circuit. Under the lights, it is absolutely a fantastic scene. The skyline that overlooks it, the Singapore Flyer, the huge Ferris wheel, 165 meters high, that overlooks pretty much the entirety of the circuit. And in the slight distance, the Marina Bay Sands Resort, the hotel with a mall, museum, and a huge infinity pool that sits right on the top. And it looks like there's a ship sat right on the top of that building. And that is a prime position if you've got the right ticket, sitting along the rooftop there to enjoy some of this action. 19 turns, 12 to the left and 7 to the right. Because we have this 400-meter straight now, Alice, where are we thinking the main overtaking points are going to come? Is that now going to suddenly increase the likelihood of overtaking?
I would say it gives it a little bit more of a chance, but unless someone makes a huge error out of turn 14, which is actually where Yuki Tsunoda locked up yesterday, so it is possible, then they could get the run and make benefit of that straight all the way down to 16. But I think it'll be tough. The main overtaking spots with DRS aid, of course, is going to be down into turn 1. You can get someone into turn 5. No DRS there, but you then do have DRS after going into turn 7, another opportunity, and then down into 14. So there's only those sort of areas I would say you're more likely to have the chance to overtake, but turn 1 is going to be your main opportunity.
Andrew, can we talk tyres and strategy? We were talking about Miami earlier on, and can Verstappen feed in and find some clean air? What are we expecting for this the next 62 laps across this Marina Bay circuit?
We just had the tyres come in, Harry, and as I predicted, Verstappen has started on the hard tyre, so he'll be looking to run long. Interestingly, all the top 10 ahead of him are on the medium, apart from Charles Leclerc on the soft. Now, I would imagine that's Leclerc trying to ensure he gets ahead of Russell at the start with the extra grip from the soft tyre, so the Ferrari can run 1 and 2, they would hope. On the inside line where Russell is, everyone on the even-numbered side of the grid has a more difficult start because it's not the racing line, so it's more slippy, less grip. So you would expect the even-numbered starters to struggle at the start. Having said that, Sergio Perez, it was a wet start last year, but Sergio Perez started second last year and got into the lead by the first corner.
Yeah, and Perez is also on that hard compound tyre along with his teammate. A reminder, the big shock from yesterday's qualifying is that neither Red Bull made it through into the top 10, and they've been struggling all weekend long with issues, struggling to get temperature into their tyres, really finding the grip difficult, the rear of that Red Bull proving very loose. But that's opened it up. We've always said all season long, Alice, well, what a season we would have if you just took Red Bull and Max Verstappen out of it. We've kind of got that now. Prediction for the win?
Oh, I feel like this has changed so many times for me across the entire day, but I'm going to go different. I'm going to say George Russell. I think he fancies his chances. You?
I am going to stick with the pole man. I think Carlos Sainz might be able to do it if he can hold on. But there is not long until we find out who will be the Singapore Grand Prix winner. It is time for the Singapore Grand Prix. Starting from pole position, it's back-to-back poles for Carlos Sainz in the Scarlet Red Ferrari. He'll start alongside George Russell in the Mercedes, his first front-row start since Australia this year. Charles Leclerc, less than a tenth covering the top three. He goes from third, in front of Lando Norris in an upgraded McLaren from fourth, and Lewis Hamilton, not as happy with his Mercedes car compared to his teammate, rounds out the top five. A fantastic qualifying, his best since Miami this year for Kevin Magnussen in the Haas. He'll start in sixth ahead of Fernando Alonso in seventh. The birthday boy turns 27 today for Esteban Ocon on the Alpine and is rewarded with a top 8 start in front of the other Haas of Nico Hülkenberg, and in his third ever qualifying in Formula 1, it's his first top 10 start for Liam Lawson, the Kiwi for AlphaTauri. Max Verstappen, the reigning champion with one hand on this year's title already, starts from 11th in front of Pierre Gasly, and his Red Bull teammate Sergio Perez from 13th. Alex Albon and Yuki Tsunoda round out the top 15. Valtteri Bottas, Oscar Piastri in the McLaren is 17th in front of Logan Sargent's Williams. There'll be 18 cars on the grid because Zhou Guanyu in his Alfa Romeo with power unit changes will start from the pit lane, and no Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin after his huge crash in qualifying yesterday. He's still feeling a bit sore, and Aston Martin had withdrawn him from the race. 18 cars on the grid as we're about to go lights out. Right, formation lap then well and truly underway for the Singapore Grand Prix, the 15th race of the Formula One season. Under the lights, and it is, well, could it be the first non-Red Bull win of the season? The first non-Red Bull win since Brazil 2022. Let's keep you up to date with how the drivers and the team's championships look before we get underway. It is Max Verstappen who has the lead with 145 points. It's only a matter of time as to when he'll take the title. 364 points to his name. Sergio Perez is second on 219. Alonso, Hamilton, Sainz the top five. In the teams, Red Bull could technically wrap it up this weekend, but they need a 1-2 fastest lap, and they need Mercedes to score 1 point or less. But given qualifying, that looks like a very tall order. They are, with a 583 points, the current leaders in front of Mercedes. Then come Ferrari, Aston Martin and McLaren round out the top 5 of the Constructors' Championship. The Mercedes team garage watches on. Toto Wolff full of smiles, full of confidence as Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari and George Russell in the Mercedes already lined up in their starting grids. Rosanna.
Absolutely, and the crowd are on their feet in the grandstand overlooking the start-finish straight. What a moment to witness to see Carlos Sainz lead the field away. It is 30 degrees air temperature, 37 track temperature, and a massive 71% humidity. It's going to get hot and spicy out there, guys.
I hope you can find some sort of air conditioning, Rosanna, sooner the better. But we are about to enjoy some brilliant racing. 62 laps of racing. And Alice, final thoughts. What are the drivers thinking as they are sliding into their grid slots?
You're trying to get your concentration set. You don't want to be staring too long at the lights. You want to make sure you're perfectly lined up in your grid slot and you're all ready to go.
Logan Sargent in the Williams pulls up as the final car on the grid. 18 cars on the grid. Joe in the pit lane. No Lance Stroll. It's the red Ferrari of Carlos Sainz on pole. George Russell and the Mercedes alongside him. It's all eyes to the lights and foot to the floor as we go racing in Singapore. And it's an even start initially from Sainz and Russell, but Leclerc has the better of them and slots into second. Russell down to third as he has to force his teammate Lewis Hamilton wide to cut across the first chicane. Russell manages to hold on to that position. Hamilton rejoins in front of Russell. Lando Norris is lurking behind as well, but it's a clean start from Carlos Sainz, who holds on to the lead in front of Charles Leclerc. Then comes Lewis Hamilton, George Russell, Lando Norris right behind him as the sparks fly under the lights and into the second heavy braking zone. The Haas of Kevin Magnussen diving down the inside further back of the Alpine of Esteban Ocon as they jostle for position, but it's been a fairly clean first lap as it concertinas up, and Kevin Magnussen and Esteban Ocon through the right-hander of turn 8 go wheel to wheel. Ocon wins out on that occasion.
The great start for Lewis Hamilton, but disaster for George Russell, who's really slipped back. I'm expecting him to be on the radio because Lewis cut turn 2. Here's George.
So you're going to let me back pass, or?
As expected, but you had to go through a bollard there, and Lewis, I think by the looks of it, he did go through that bollard, but Lewis just thought, do you know what, I've got nothing to lose here, I'm just going to try it round the outside and take the shortcut, which he did. So that'll be interesting. Let's keep an eye on to see what Mercedes do there, but we now have Charles Leclerc racing up to the back of his teammate on those soft tyres.
Further back in the pack, Max Verstappen, who started 11th, has gained a position at the expense really of Liam Lawson, who's fallen down to 12th. So Verstappen in the points and up into the top 10. His teammate Sergio Perez is down in 13th. He's still where he started. Brief yellow flag appears as we complete lap 1 and start lap 2. It's Carlos Sainz who leads in front of Charles Leclerc, Hamilton, Russell, Norris the top 5, Alonso, Ocon, Magnussen, Hulkenberg, Verstappen the top 10, Gasly, Lawson, Perez, Piastri and Albon the top 15, Sargent, Bottas, Joe and Tsunoda, who's had a poor start down in 19th and last.
Yeah, he's actually dropped down to the back of the field because of going off. There was a yellow flag in that final sector near I think it was on the exit actually of 14 where he went off yesterday. So we'll keep an eye on that. It has gone green now and he's out, Harry.
Yeah, we're hearing Yuki Tsunoda stopped on track and now we can see him out of his car. Another weekend where he didn't even get one full racing lap under his belt, but jostling for position further up in the front. We were wondering if Lewis Hamilton, who gained a position in front of George Russell by really cutting the chicane on the exit of turn 1 and feeding back into turn 3, he was ahead of his teammate. Hamilton, though, now behind of Russell, who is back in front in third. Hamilton 4th, as Verstappen further back manages to overtake Nico Hulkenberg in the Haas, and he's up to 9th spot. His next victim will be Kevin Magnussen, who will not make it easy for the Dutchman. Sainz leads Leclerc by 1.2 seconds. Leclerc is on that soft compound of rubber. It will fall away quicker, but it got him a better start off the line, which is what Ferrari wanted, to make sure they could secure a 1-2 going out of turn 1. And that is exactly what they have done. It's worked out for Ferrari so far as we start lap 3.
Lewis needs to give the position back.
Yeah,
he just braked way too late. He committed to it, so he needs to give 2 positions back.
Understood, Lando. We've already raised it with the race director.
Yeah, but they're going to do it for George, but he just committed to going off, so of course he could brake a lot later than me, you know.
Well, I think giving the place back to George, we'll have to have a look at another replay of the starters in the pits. I think that is Guan Yu Zhou coming in and making a tyre change, going on the hard tyre from the soft. I understand giving it back to George, but yeah, giving it back to Lando, from seeing the start, I think he was already past Lando Norris really before he sort of entered that sort of phase of the corner into turn 1. But Lewis is all over the back of George, so Lewis Hamilton really fired up, and actually it's George Russell with the fastest lap of the race, as these 2 Mercedes are dragging Lando Norris along, are on the hunt for the 2 Ferraris.
Yeah, it is Sainz who leads by 1.2 seconds to his teammate Leclerc. Then comes George Russell, who has just set the fastest lap. Hamilton is 4th ahead of Norris. This is the sound of Max Verstappen, who is trying to make up ground, having started from outside of the top 10. He's already picked off Lawson and Hulkenberg. His next stop is Kevin Magnussen, and down the inside is Magnussen into turn 14, desperately trying to hold on to 8 spots. And Magnussen said before this race he was going to defend, he was going to try and hold on to some points. That Haas, which has not brought any upgrades this weekend, they have gone the wrong way with car concept. They're bringing a new one in Austin, Texas later this year. Find themselves in the top 10 with both cars, and Magnussen not giving an inch to Max Verstappen and not crumbling under the pressure as we start lap 4 into the braking zone of turn 1, and Verstappen has to settle behind Magnussen for the time being.
Yeah, Charles Leclerc has responded now, posting fastest lap of the race. He was under threat because he was just within the reaches of George Russell in DRS, but actually he is now clawed back a couple of tenths, 2 or 3 tenths, to his teammate Carlos Sainz, and he's on the edge now of getting DRS.
Sainz, Leclerc, Russell, Hamilton, Norris, the top 5. Alonso, Ocon, Magnussen, Verstappen, Hulkenberg, the top 10. Those are your point scorers. Gasly, Lawson, Perez, Piastri, Albon, the top 15. Sargent, Bottas and Zhou, the 18 drivers still in this race. Zhou came in for an early pit stop. Tsunoda not even completing a lap before finding himself out of this race. As we get another look at the start, Alice.
Yeah, so I'm just looking to see Lewis Hamilton. Yeah, I think that he probably could have stayed alongside George Russell but avoided having contact, avoided a risk. I don't think he needs to give the position back personally to Lando, because Lando did brake pretty early. Lewis had got the car stopped for the corner. That's we're listening and watching a replay of Lewis on board Lewis Hamilton. Yeah, he just decided, you know what, I'm going to not bother having contact with my teammate.
Push wide by George.
I wouldn't say you got pushed wide by George. You weren't fully alongside there, Lewis, but there we go. And now Charles Leclerc is the sound you can hear. The onboard, he just gets the much better launch off the line, doesn't he, on those soft tyres compared to George?
Yeah, did exactly what they wanted to, and he slots in behind Sainz, who equally got a decent start as well and held on to that lead. But Leclerc is coming back at him. This is the sound further back in the pack of Oscar Piastri, and he's got a grade A view of, I think, why Yuki Tsunoda found himself out of this race, and it was contact. And this is the sound of Tsunoda.
I have puncture, I think. Yeah, Perez just Perez, honestly.
And Yuki Tsunoda pulls off and immediately stops his car. Contact with the Alfa Romeo. I think that was Zhou, which is why we saw him come in early for a pit stop. And we're just seeing George Russell. This is the sound of him taking that place back from Lewis Hamilton, who I think has given the place back to Lando Norris now. Hamilton down to 5th, as the FIA stewards did say they were going to investigate that turn 2 incident involving him. No further action now that he has given those places back. So a little bit of chopping and changing in the first few laps, but it's Sainz who holds on for now, has just over a second of a gap in front of his teammate Leclerc, Russell, Norris and Hamilton, the top 5. Now Alonso holding on to 6th. Magnussen still in front of Max Verstappen in 8th. It's not been easy for Verstappen to get past Magnussen. He's been stuck behind him now for a couple of laps. He's well within the DRS zone, which will be enabled now, and has been. Once you get within a second of the car in front in the designated zones, you are able to press the button that opens up the slots in the rear wing to give you the drag reduction, makes you faster in a straight line, and that is something Charles Leclerc has on his teammate now, Carlos Sainz. But into turn 1, it is Sainz who still leads on lap 6 of 62 here for the Singapore Grand Prix under the lights at this Marina Bay Street circuit. And Verstappen still close to Magnussen, but not finding a way through. Equally, the Haas of Hulkenberg is keeping within Verstappen's range as well, and he rounds out the top 10.
Yeah, I'm amazed, really. I'd like to hear Andrew's opinion on that, of whether Lewis needed to give that place back to Norris. I think that Lewis had got the car stopped. He just felt that George pushed him wide, but I don't think George could have done. But he probably could have stayed there, really, and possibly stayed ahead of Norris.
I think you can see it both ways, Alice. I can see Norris's point. You know, I don't know. It's a hard one to call. I could see the point that Norris was making. Hamilton was wrong to say he was pushed off. He did choose to go off. And in which case, you know, in Norris's case, you could argue, well, he's gained a position by doing that, or 2 positions in that case. But right now, to be honest with you, I'm more concerned about Max Verstappen. The leaders at the moment will be pleased that he's still stuck behind Kevin Magnussen, but it doesn't look like he's going to be stuck there for long. He's challenging him. He's doing, in fact, he's overtaking him now.
Open, it shuts down Esplanade Drive and into turn 14. Verstappen gets the move done finally on Kevin Magnussen. He set that up, coming over the Anderson Bridge, went wide, took the wider line through the following hairpin, and with the aid of that DRS, managed to get the move done on Magnussen, who held on for as long as he could. But that means Verstappen is now up to 8th. In front of him is Esteban Ocon in the Alpine.
And so what happens now is it brings into play this strategy that we were talking about earlier for Verstappen and Red Bull. On those hard tyres, the plan will be to stay out while everyone on the medium and soft in front of him stops. Now, the question then becomes, if he does do that, depending on how the race plays out, how much time can he gain by staying out? And I think all the teams will be looking at that now and thinking, uh-oh, how do we stop this happening?
Yeah, we're just also seeing Max Verstappen's teammate Perez, who briefly dropped down to 14th behind the McLaren of Oscar Piastri, then managed to retake it under DRS. So Perez, who is also on the hard compound tyre, struggling to keep with Liam Lawson in front of him in the AlphaTauri. He's on the medium, so Perez not able to cut through the pack as quickly as Max Verstappen, but it's Sainz who leads Leclerc on lap 7 of 62. Let's head down to Rosanna Tennant.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see when Ferrari pull the trigger on bringing Charles Leclerc in. Pirelli, who make the tyres in Formula One, coming into the race, they said, actually, don't bother almost going on the soft tyre off the start. It's such a short run to that first corner, but Charles Leclerc has proved them wrong, making up that place off the start. But when it comes to the life of that soft tyre, you're going to expect to see him in around lap 13 if he's going to do 2 stops, or lap 15. So going to be an interesting call for Ferrari to make, and he should be one of the first drivers, or obviously after Zhou Guanyu, who's already been, one of the first drivers to pit, you would imagine, on that soft red tyre.
So, Rosanna, I don't think Ferrari will be planning a 2-stop race with Leclerc, even though he started on the soft. They'll be trying to run long enough to get him onto the hards and then run that to the end of the race. There's too much disadvantage trying to do 2 stops unless there's a safety car that demands it. The question is, how long can he make those soft tyres last? He lost his tyres on the race simulation run on Friday. All the other teams noticed that, so he'll be very aware of that as he's driving this race at the moment.
This is the sound of Charles Leclerc, who is keeping within a second of his teammate Carlos Sainz, following him through turns 1 and 2, and then down the Raffles Boulevard, the slight right-hand kink to turn 6 for the braking zone of turn 7. So he's keeping within him. Russell, a couple of seconds back, though, and just biding his time on managing tyres.
Yeah, and going back to that point with the tyres, he's in the hot, dirty air of his teammate. He has got the gap down to 8/10 of a second, 9/10 of a second, so he's in the benefit of DRS, but that just kills your front tyres, really following closely. So it's going to be a tough one for him, and if he struggled in the simulations to look after his tyres, sitting behind a red-hot Ferrari is going to make it even worse.
Lap 8 of 62 here in Singapore. It's Carlos Sainz, who started on pole position, who still leads this race ahead of his teammate Charles Leclerc. George Russell rounds out the top 3. Norris, Hamilton, the top 5. Nice battle developing as well between 6th and 7th. The old teammates, Fernando Alonso and Esteban Ocon, with Max Verstappen closing in on them as well as he continues his climb up through the field, having started from 11th. The 2 Hasses of Magnussen and Hülkenberg round out the top 10. Gasly, Lawson, Perez, Piastri and Albon the top 15. Sargent, Bottas and Zhou, the 18 drivers in this race. Zhou started from the pit lane and has already come in along with his teammate for a set of hard compound tyres. Tsunoda did start this race, but with issues in his AlphaTauri, didn't even complete a lap and is now out of this race. He's made it back to the pit lane, and we did not see Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin take the start of this race. He was withdrawn by the team after his huge crash at the end of Q1 in qualifying yesterday. Driver okay, but still feeling a little bit sore, so they have withdrawn him. We look forward to seeing him back next weekend for the Japanese Grand Prix. But as the sparks fly under the lights here in Singapore, it's out now. A battle for 6th that is brewing, because while Alonso and Ocon scrap, Verstappen is just slowly edging away at them, and a reminder that everybody else is on the medium compound tyre directly in front of Verstappen. He is on the hards.
Yeah, birthday boy Esteban Ocon turns 27 today, hunting down someone certainly a bit older than him in Fernando Alonso, but actually a very good first sector there from Ocon. And actually this group here, Harry, of Alonso, Ocon and Verstappen, they are lapping quicker now than everyone in front of them, all bar Lewis Hamilton.
Alice, I think if I know Fernando Alonso, I think what he's doing at the moment is his usual race. He tends to sit about 2.5 seconds behind the car in front of him in the first stint, and assuming he's got the pace, then he'll close up as the pit stop window approaches. I don't know that he's doing that right now, but I suspect that's what's probably going on, and that's what we're seeing from the lap times, because he's exactly 2.5 seconds behind Hamilton, which is protecting his tyres in the way that you were describing Leclerc is not doing by following Sainz so closely at the front.
And if anyone knows what Fernando Alonso might be doing, it's most likely Andrew Benson, the BBC's chief F1 writer. In the commentary box alongside myself, Harry Benjamin, the W Series racing driver and a woman who scored a podium here in Singapore. In that series, Alice Powell also joins me. And down in the pits, it's Rosanna Tennant.
It is, yes, I haven't won a race here or even raced. Here, let's hear from Charles Leclerc.
And target gap to Sainz, we need 3 seconds. At the moment it's 1.0.
That was Charles Leclerc on the radio. They're just being told of the gap he needs. And think of this, I mean, particularly look at his teammate as well, Carlos Sainz. I think you were saying, Andrew, across the weekend, if you can get in front and hold it, Sainz has the benefit of just being able to manage the pace. And we know Sainz can be a little bit harder on his tyres compared to Leclerc during the race.
Yeah, and the first stint of a Singapore Grand Prix is all about tyre management. That's what they do. They eke the tyres out as long as they can, start to push towards the pit stop, towards the pit stop window. What Ferrari are talking about there, I think, is not racing between their two drivers. I was speaking to another team boss earlier today. He was saying that the only way Ferrari will lose this race is if they race between themselves. He alluded to the Hungarian Grand Prix last year. It's a bit niche, but if you remember, Leclerc went onto the hard tyres for his pit stop during that race, and it completely messed his race up. And this person was saying that the reason they did that was they got too focused on the intra-team battle between Leclerc and Sainz. He was saying they have to not race each other if they're going to. That's the best way for Ferrari to win this race.
And Hungary last year as well. I think that was another race where Max Verstappen came through, having not started in the top 10. Another strategy masterclass from the Red Bull pit wall. Let's head back to you, Rosanna. Lap 11 at the moment. Sainz now 1.3 seconds over his teammate Leclerc, with Russell, Norris and Hamilton rounding out the top 5.
Yeah, and I'm looking a little bit further down the field at the battle between Liam Lawson in the AlphaTauri and Sergio Perez in the second Red Bull, P12 and P13. P12 up for grabs, but I'd like to think that this is racing for a little bit more than just P12. Well, that's nice to know. Carlos obviously feeling very comfortable in that lead Ferrari this evening. P1 for him ahead of his teammate Charles Leclerc. But if we go back to that battle between Liam Lawson and Sergio Perez, Perez managed to dip within a second of Liam Lawson, of course, putting himself in DRS range, but it's just now outside a second, and he doesn't seem to be able to get it back under. This is really proving pretty tough for Sergio Perez to make the move on Liam Lawson. Perez on the hard tyre, Liam on that medium. But Perez's teammate Max Verstappen also on the hard tyre. He's managing to make his way through the order.
So that message from Sainz was really interesting. I can go for it. Here's some more radio.
Yeah, it looks like they're going to sacrifice Leclerc.
There you go. That's exactly what I was saying. That was Mercedes responding to Ferrari's message to Leclerc to back off to 3 seconds. That was saying basically, you can't win this race, Charles. And Sainz was saying, when he said I can go forever at this pace, he means the tyres are not wearing in any way. He means he can push his pit stop out and out and out. And that's what they actually need to do to protect against Verstappen. Because if they stop, they give Verstappen a chance to go in free air. If they stay out for as long as possible, it makes it harder and harder for Verstappen to take advantage of those hard tyres, because even the hard tyres suffer from overheating around Singapore.
And this is the sound of Max Verstappen as he crosses the line to start lap 12, down through the gears into the left-hander of turn 1. Then there's an S-type chicane that brings you through 2, and then the left-hander of 3. Gentle on the throttle as he then heads up the gears towards turn number 5, which is the right-hander that brings you onto Raffles Boulevard. He's chasing down Esteban Ocon, but actually he hasn't been able to close on him as rapidly as I think he would have hoped, as perhaps we expected. I know he's on the harder compounder tyre compared to Ocon and Alonso, who are scrapping for 6th in front of him on the mediums. But this is Verstappen.
Yes, this is, but I wonder if he's just not risking overheating the tyre. Like Andrew just said, even the hard tyre struggles and wears a lot in these hot conditions. He's actually matching the pace of the leaders, so the gap to the front isn't really opening up.
Yeah, Harry, forget about pace and hard tyres. They're all way off the pace at the moment. They're driving really, really slowly.
They're in full tyre management mode.
They're full tyre management mode. They're 10 seconds off a qualifying time. Now, there's only 2.5 seconds in terms of fuel load. The rest of it is management. So that's what we're seeing at the moment. Everyone managing. No one's going at the speed they could possibly go at if they were pushing hard.
Well, it's lap 12 of 62, and if everybody is in tyre management mode, then it will be perhaps a little bit of a slow burn, but it could well end up in the first non-Red Bull win since the Brazilian Grand Prix last year. And who won that? George Russell. Well, he currently occupies third place. He's about 1.8 seconds back. Charles Leclerc is in second. Carlos Sainz leads this race. The closest fights right now are between 6th and 7th, Alonso and Ocon. And then there is a battle for 9th and 10th brewing. Here's Leclerc first.
I think Carlos needs
Copy, understood.
And that was Charles Leclerc there. So Sainz then, he thinks, slowing down, pushing Leclerc a little bit back into Russell. If they are going to sacrifice Leclerc, I don't think Leclerc wants to make it a complete walkover.
No, and he's not wrong. He was doing on lap 9, 139.6 was Carlos Sainz. He's now doing 140.5, so around about that kind of lap time. So he's certainly slowing down, and we are on lap 12. So Charles has definitely got that correct.
1.1 seconds, yeah, the gap now between Sainz and Leclerc. That other battle brewing is around 9th, 10th and 11th between Magnussen, Hülkenberg and Gasly, the two Hasses, and the Alpine, in a brilliant weekend so far for the Haas team, for sure. Both cars getting into Q3. Fallen back from where they qualified, though, but holding on for points as it currently stands in this first phase of the Singapore Grand Prix. We've got the opening laps underway. We've had our jostling for position, and now the drivers seem to be settling down and managing these tyres. And the one thing that we've seen in every single Singapore Grand Prix since its inception is a safety car intervention, which suddenly throws the strategy out of whack. Do you dive in the pit lane? Do you not? You could benefit massively. You could not. That hasn't yet happened as we start lap 14 on board with Pierre Gasly in the Alpine. And it's coming back to the Ferraris. Surely, after what we saw in Monza with the team principal Fred Vasseur sitting back, happily letting them race it out, and there was a line that was pretty much crossed between them at one stage. That doesn't seem, I know we're early stages still, but that doesn't seem to be quite the way they're heading for this race.
No, but it's Ferrari, and I hate to say that as a Ferrari fan growing up, but they need to watch that they don't start to screw themselves over, because Carlos has certainly dropped that pace. He's just picked it up a couple of attempts that previous lap. But Hamilton now is setting fast sectors. Norris is lapping at similar pace. Leclerc now has dropped back. The gap's over 2.4 seconds now, so he has decided to certainly slow down this lap. But Ferrari just need to be careful, because George is going to want this race win as well, and it's certainly possible. I think he was very close to pole position with his small oversteer moment that he had at 16 yesterday. So Ferrari just need to be careful and not try to be too clever, as actually we are now seeing George Russell. That gap between him and Charles Leclerc now is going to be under 1 second very soon, and that means then he is within DRS reach.
If you were Charles Leclerc and you saw this strategy unfolding, though, well, let's hear from him.
Gap to Sainz, target 3.
So that target 3 seconds, I believe that's referring to as the gap between himself and Carlos Sainz. It's currently just about coming up to 2.5 seconds. Leclerc abiding by Ferrari's instructions, happy to play the team game right now, but surely he is watching the win fall away from him.
Yeah, and he is.
And I can't believe he's willing to accept that.
Well,
the first chance all year.
They pay his wages, I'm afraid. So he unfortunately has to listen, but he is at risk, and I totally agree with him. And as a driver, that's hugely frustrating. As this pack now, we've got a battle. We've got Russell is dragging along Norris, is dragging along Hamilton. The gap then from Hamilton to Alonso is 3.5 seconds, so they're sort of out of the picture at the moment. But we've got a real good scrap going on for P2 here, and it does put Leclerc at risk. And as Russell just times it right and gets that DRS and dives one down the inside, then that's really then put him at risk. And then I think Sainz is then at risk as well.
Well, it is Sainz who leads. Now 2.1 seconds the gap. Ferrari would like that to be a 3-second gap to his teammate Charles Leclerc. George Russell just over a second behind in third. Norris, Hamilton, the top 5. Alonso, Ocon, Verstappen, Magnussen and Hulkenberg the top 10, and those are the point scorers. Gasly, Lawson, Perez still down in 13th. Wasn't able to make use of the early stages and cut through the field like his teammate. He's in front of Piastri and Albon, who are 14th and 15th. Logan Sargent is 16th in front of the two Alfa Romeos in 17th and 18th.
Well, I don't think...
I told you he wouldn't sit back.
Is really
Charles Leclerc, who's just set the fastest lap.
Yeah, exactly. He's just set the fastest lap of the race. But everyone's picked their pace up a little bit now. So I wonder if Ferrari been on the blower and said to Carlos, look, stop messing about and slowing down, because you need to play the game as well. So he's increased his pace. So has Charles, but then so has Russell. And I expect Norris and Hamilton to do the same. So George now is within 3.7 seconds of the race lead. So it's going to get interesting, because they're all starting to close up a little bit now.
This is a game of chess that is being played at a couple of 100 kilometers an hour around the streets of Singapore, isn't it? As perhaps now Sainz has indeed picked up the pace, because the gap is 2.2 seconds, and it was just edging down towards a second at one point, with Leclerc falling back into the clutches of Russell, and as he said on the radio, being at risk. So Sainz then picking up the pace, and I think underlining how Carlos Sainz has got full control of this race right now, and just able to what did he say earlier? I could go forever on this set of tyres. He's on that medium compound tyre. He got a good start on the mediums and has so far controlled the pace quite well. There's been no major comings together in these opening 16 laps as we get the first 25% of this race underway. Max Verstappen was the man we're all watching to see. Could he walk through the field, or would it be a little bit harder for this time around, having started down in 11th after a poor qualifying? They're still not happy with this car, Red Bull, struggling with tyre temperature and general grip in both Red Bulls. He's still in 8th, this is the sound of him, and the Ferrari battle of chess continues. Leclerc had the fastest lap, and now it's gone back to Carlos Sainz.
It certainly has, and I say one thing is catching, another thing is overtaking, and it's certainly hard to overtake around this circuit. They do have the benefit of DRS, of course, but Fernando Alonso now is starting to close up the gap to the pack. Andrew.
So gap to Sainz in front, 2.3, and we need 5 seconds in 5 laps.
Wow. So that they have changed from 3 seconds up to 5 seconds. I mean, that's a big ask, and if you need to do that in that number of laps that they've just stated there, that then puts Leclerc really at risk.
I think the other thing is, Ferrari are not exactly consistent with making excellent strategy choices, are they? So I'm sure that Leclerc's sitting in the car thinking, are they sure they've got this right? 5 seconds, really?
I'm also sat here thinking the same thing, but back to my point I was just making before that radio, Andrew was waving at the screen pointing out that, not the correct phrase really to use on this driver, but is it hammer time for Alonso, and he's now closing the gap to Lewis Hamilton in front.
Yeah, Hamilton 5th, Alonso 6th, Esteban Ocon 7th, Verstappen 8th. Then comes the two Hasses, and this is the sound of Pierre Gasly in the Alpine. Makes his way through the turn 16 and 17 chicane. It spits you out so close to the wall on the exit. A short drive down to the left-handers of turn 18 and 19, the double left-handers that see off this lap as he comes across the line. DRS open for Pierre Gasly. Gets close under braking to the Haas of Hulkenberg in front of him, but they're all holding station.
Let me know what our best shot of winning this race is, what I need to do.
So we need to keep the pressure on these Ferraris.
Yep, I agree. That was going to be my answer, is to keep the pressure on the Ferraris. Try and force a mistake. It's a long race. It's a hot race. We're probably going to be racing for around, if we get a safety car, for easily over an hour and 40 minutes. And temperatures at the moment, air temperature is 30 degrees, track 36, but the humidity has gone up 3% compared to when the race started. It's 73% now, and it's warm.
Like a possible brief and light rain shower approaching. Could be here in 5 minutes. Pit lane would get wet first. On the radar, this would be class 1 and last only a couple of minutes.
Well, and then we've got some rain coming in, and that even turns up your concentration even more. But the drivers say this is one of the hardest races on the calendar, and 100% it is. They can lose up to 3 to 5 kilos of weight just through losing sweat alone. So it's a hard race, and if you're putting someone under pressure and dehydration starts to ever so creep in, you make that small error, there is no room for error here, and you're into the barrier. We've seen on many occasions during this race, as Gasly now is still hunting down Nico Hülkenberg and Kevin Magnussen.
He cannot find a way through, as we get some nice images of the radars in the pit lane. But Rosanna, class 1 rain only for a few moments. It doesn't fill me with complete hope that it's going to be a sudden dart for the pits for intermediate tyres.
No, and at the moment it is looking dry, Harry, just still very hot and humid as you'd expect. But I've just been listening into Max Verstappen's radio, and it's his race engineer Jean-Pierre Lambiase telling him, and obviously has told him several times, because he said, I'll tell you again, there is no merit staying this close to Esteban Ocon. So that's why Max Verstappen has now dropped back to around 1.7 behind Esteban Ocon, trying to preserve those hard tyres, trying to go as long as possible. And I guess the thinking is from Red Bull that maybe now that we're nearly 20 laps into this 62-lap race, someone may make a mistake which could, of course, then neutralise the race, and then he'd have a bit of a chance to make up some ground.
Yeah, I was just also looking at what the gap between Sergio Perez was to Liam Lawson in front of him. It's about 0.8 per second. So Perez then very much trying to stay with him. And just as you say it, Rosanna, we have our first proper incident of the race, and it's Logan Sargent who has found the wall. He's able to reverse out of it and keep it moving, but the front wing is completely gone. He drives over it, and he's dragging it along with him as well, and kicking up carbon fibre as it splinters off onto the track. I think, was that coming into turn 8, I wonder, and now he's heading down towards the left-hander of turn 10 as the sparks kick up. That front wing still very much there. We've only seen the end of this incident so far, but the front wing's still with him, and I think we're about to get another look at it, Alice.
Yeah, he just runs slightly wide, goes a little bit too hot, and as I said, there's no room for error, hits the barrier. But just looking at those live pictures, Harry, that was throwing debris all over the track. He's gone all the way there from turn 8 round turn 9, and he's still going down the straight into 14, and it's kicking debris off everywhere, sparks flying. And then this adds a risk to a puncture for the next driver that will be coming through, and guess who that is? That will be our race leader, Carlos Sainz. So I mean, will they put out a safety car? Because that's a lot of debris that's being scattered across the circuit, and that again, that is dangerous. It puts a risk out. So could we be seeing our first safety car?
Well, Logan Sargent is still going to make that car back to the pit lane as he now peels into it. The front wing has stayed with him just underneath the car, while carbon fibre has splintered off it, and it really is a bit of a messy Williams as he peels into the pit lane. And as Alice, you were alluding to there with the carbon fibre and the debris on track, that has brought out our first safety car. So pit stop time dramatically reduced to around about 15-16 seconds is the loss if you pit for new tyres under the pit stop time, as we get a message from Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari, who is told to box, and his gap to Charles Leclerc is 8.3 seconds. So that gap went up massively. That was only around 3 seconds at one point. So in the last lap and a half, it's gone up to almost 10 seconds. The Williams team get ready to change the tyres. Carlos Sainz comes into the pits. Rosanna.
Yes, Carlos Sainz coming in. They are the second team in the pit lane, so he hasn't got far to go. The mechanics are there to receive him, jack up the car, tyres are on, and he's opting for the hard tyres. And it's a good stop, 2.5 stop time. And in comes the second Ferrari of Charles Leclerc as well. George Russell also in the pit, Lando Norris, Hamilton, Alonso, Ocon. They're all diving in. Max Verstappen, however, staying out on that hard tyre.
Oh, Leclerc held slightly longer, though. Longer pit stop time, 5.7. How quick is Russell and Hamilton's? Russell's is 3 seconds. Hamilton's looks like he was stationary a little bit longer. I think Leclerc will be the victim there. Let's see. Perez stays out. He tumbles up the order. Sainz comes out back in the lead, but who's behind him? It's Max Verstappen in second, who has elected not to pit. He's on that hard compound of tyre. So Verstappen second, Russell feeds out in third, Perez now finds himself in fourth, and Norris managed to jump Charles Leclerc in all of that, Alice.
Yeah, well, the gap when the safety car, just before the safety car come out between Charles and Sainz, was 4.3 seconds. So as soon as that safety car board came out, Charles Leclerc slowed right down, and that was to basically give a buffer and to totally back up George Russell, just to make sure that if Ferrari did have a drama in the pit stop, which is possible, that then he would get out in front and also would allow Verstappen or someone else to jump through. But then karma hit, and Charles was then in the pits, but I didn't really see any traffic. Lewis Hamilton came through, so maybe they ended up having to wait for Lewis, but there was a gap there, and I think he was allowed to go out. We're just seeing a replay of Fernando Alonso, who's
Yeah, well, it's all started to kick off here in Singapore. The first safety cars come out courtesy of Logan Sargent and the Williams finding the wall. That has meant everyone started for the pits. Sainz has reappeared back in the lead. Max Verstappen stayed out and has now got himself up into second position. We'll see how that one unfolds, but Ferrari making Charles Leclerc a bit of a sacrificial lamb as he falls down the order, but Sainz still leads. Okay, back to the action. Under safety car conditions here in Singapore, lap 21 of 62. Sainz, who has come into the pits during that, leads this race. Max Verstappen did not come into the pits, stayed out on his hard compound tyres. He now lies second in front of George Russell, who did pit, Sergio Perez, who did not pit, Norris, who did. Leclerc held long in the pit stop, down into sixth. Well and truly playing the team game this weekend in this race. Hamilton, Alonso, Ocon, Bottas, the top 10.
So we just saw a replay. We saw two replays there. Fernando Alonso, he ran over pit entry line, unable to slow his car down enough, locking up. That's going to be a penalty. He's under investigation, but that's going to be a slam dunk. 5 seconds more than likely. And then we saw the replay of what happened to Charles Leclerc in the pit stop. And Lewis Hamilton, they were waiting for Lewis to come in. Mercedes, because they were so close together, effectively were going to have to double stack. And Lewis came in ever so slowly and pulled in the front of the Ferrari pit stop, waiting just for George to be released, which then, of course, didn't allow Charles to be released. So it's almost like double. It was karma, basically. The Mercedes got them back for Charles sort of slowing down George Russell, but the safety car is now ending, and Max Verstappen is sat there in P2 splitting, which you could say effectively would be the battle for the lead.
So as the safety car then comes to an end, the cars are weaving left and right. It will be ending on this lap. They've still got a fair lap to complete. There is still debris on track. Andrew, Verstappen getting himself up into second, not pitting. How advantageous is this for him now?
Well, he's still got to stop again, Harry. It's probably not ideal for him. It looks great right now, second, but the others don't have to stop, and he does. So that's going to cost him 30 seconds if there's not another safety car. So it doesn't really help him a huge amount. What he's got to really try to do is get past Carlos Sainz. The problem is that his tyres are, 22 laps old, and Sainz is a brand new. So I don't think it's actually going to help him that much, ironically. Here's Sainz's radio.
What do you think is the plan for this?
The plan is to keep the pack together, so don't pull away. Should be doable with Max behind on use the hard. And watch for debris still. Debris on track still.
Well, it's all right saying keep the pack together, but he's got Max Verstappen behind him. And I can't imagine Max is going to want to sit around and just go, okay, yeah, it's not my fight, I'm just going to sit here. No, that's not Max, is it? His engineer had to come on the radio several times, according to Rosanna, to make sure he slowed down. As now, Carlos Sainz, Harry, slows the pack down, and who's all over the back of him? It's Max Verstappen.
Max Verstappen is right there with him, the Red Bull driver, having started down in 11th, looking to try and get in front of Sainz by the looks of things.
And if he gets ahead, all bets are off, because then he can go at his own pace. Can he get ahead of Sainz? Can he clear Sainz? Can he build a gap to Sainz? Let's see what happens.
Here we go then. Green flag back underway. Sainz puts his foot to the floor, coming out of the final chicane into the double left-hander that sees off the lap, and it's been a great restart from Carlos Sainz. Max Verstappen not able to stick with him through the corners on much older tyres compared to Carlos Sainz. George Russell is third. Perez, Norris the top 5. Leclerc, Hamilton, Alonso, Ocon, Bottas the top 10. Magnussen, Gasly, Piastri, Lawson, Hulkenberg the top 15. Albon, Zhou and Logan Sargent 18th and last in this race, with no Yuki Tsunoda, who had a mechanical issue, we believe, on the first lap in his Alpha Tauri, and the Aston Martin and Lance Stroll was withdrawn from the start of this race. Sergio Perez, who made his way up into fourth, who did not pit, is now coming under pressure from Lando Norris. So is his teammate Max Verstappen in second, as the few cars run a little bit deep, coming into the left-hander. Verstappen is under pressure here from George Russell. He's not been able to get in front of Carlos Sainz, and Sainz is pulling away while Verstappen looks like he's having to concede the position to George Russell. But coming in to the left-hander of turn 10, Verstappen all over the shop in his Red Bull, slams the door shut on George Russell, who has to bide his time. But Verstappen is struggling on these tyres as they come over the Anderson Bridge into the braking zone of the hairpin. Verstappen just about in front of Russell, but the writing is on the wall for the Dutchman as the sparks fly. But Verstappen holds on to that inside line coming into turn 14. So does his teammate Sergio Perez, who is fighting with Lando Norris. But here comes George Russell round the outside, down the short squirt to the next chicane, into the braking zone. Russell makes his way through. Norris makes his way through on Perez. Lewis Hamilton tries to find a way through as well. But in the end, George Russell gets himself up into second. Verstappen down to third. Norris up to fourth. Perez down to fifth.
George got the move, but he ran over some debris. I just saw a bit of debris that was missed that he's run over, so hopefully for George and Mercedes that won't cause a puncture. But Charles Leclerc was ever so close to going into the back of, I think it was actually Lando Norris, which then sent him wide at turn 7. He bumped over that curve, and then that allowed Lewis Hamilton down the inside. So Charles Leclerc, his sort of last 5 laps have just gone from bad to worse. There's Lewis Hamilton all over the back on Perez. He braves it around the outside. Does he keep it in? He goes over the sausage curb, Harry, but I think he's just about saved it.
Yeah, and then Hamilton hides that inside line coming into the right-hander of turn 8. He really ran over that sausage curb. The sparks as the Mercedes bottoms out on top of the red and white curving, but he holds that position in front of Sergio Perez, who is also struggling, having not pitted under the safety car and tried to utilise track position instead, as did his teammate, who has lost out to George Russell down in third. Lando Norris in fourth, and the McLaren is now all over the back of the Dutchman. It's Sainz, Russell, Verstappen, Norris, Hamilton the top 5, Perez, Leclerc, Alonso, Ocon and Kevin Magnussen, who rounds out the top 10. Down the inside of Max Verstappen into turn 14 goes the McLaren of Lando Norris, who gets the job done on Max Verstappen. Much younger tyres and a faster car. The McLaren overtakes the Red Bull, and we've not said that too much this year.
No, we certainly haven't, have we? And then Fernando Alonso, amongst all of that, we have been told he has now got a 5-second penalty, which is as we expected. Lewis Hamilton is now charging down the front straight all the way, chasing Max Verstappen. I don't think it's going to be for long, but he will be on the back of him. But DRS is now enabled, and the gap, Harry, up front, 0.7 of a second. We have a battle on here for the race win.
This race has come alive. Here's Sainz.
Russell 1 second behind. If you keep the pack balanced up, he cannot do 2 stops. Russell cannot do 2 stops.
It's so much easier said than done, though. They say it so calmly on the pit wall, but already I think that's let them down a little bit, as we're just seeing a replay of it is Lando Norris trying to go round the outside of Perez, and then without looking too far ahead in front, Charles Leclerc tries to brave it round the outside of Hamilton and ends up then being too distracted and nearly going into the back of the McLaren, and that's when he then loses the place to Lewis Hamilton. So battles going on everywhere, but Ferrari need to be careful, because I think they're going to end up shooting themselves in the foot here. There's no point of trying to back everybody up, because I think George has just got the pace. He's just so quick at the moment that the gap now is just coming down and down and down.
Now, the reason they're worried about Russell doing a 2-stop is that, remember, Mercedes saved an extra set of new medium tyres for this race. Ferrari don't want Russell to get onto those, but at any second part of the race with a safety car or anything like that, here's some Perez radio.
Hamilton run off the track. He went off. Yeah, we saw it.
He's got a good point. That was the overtaking. That was the overtaking move at turn 7, I believe, wasn't it?
I believe, and he wanted Hamilton to give him to position, but Perez is now behind Leclerc as well. So Hamilton, if he's told to do that from race control, he'll have to give Leclerc the position as well. And Carlos Sainz has lost his teammate, who's no longer behind him and playing the game and able to keep the pack behind and allow the gap that Ferrari wanted. 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds. George Russell is hungry for this race win. The first thing he said after qualifying was that we have an extra set of new medium compound tyres and we are going to try and use them if it needs be. Now, less than half a second between Carlos Sainz and George Russell, who's made good strategy calls from the Mercedes team under the safety car that was momentarily out for Logan Sargent's Williams, coming into the pits, getting the jump on those around him, and now it's just 6/10 behind Carlos Sainz as they make to the run to turn 10, the old Singapore sling chicane. Now just a left-hander gently on the throttle out through the right-hander that brings you across the Anderson Bridge into the left-hander hairpin of turn 13 and down Esplanade Drive. Sainz has the measure of him at the moment, but this is another DRS zone, and the slot in the rear wing opens up for the Mercedes as they under braking, sparks fly as the cars bottom out on the surface of this Singapore Grand Prix track. Sainz holding on to the lead for now.
He is for now, because that Mercedes just looks so much more in control. It just looks a better race car at the moment compared to Carlos Sainz's Ferrari. He's scrabbling for grip on the exit. He's having to use a little bit more curve there through 17 just to get the car rotated, and the gap now as they go across the line is 6/10 of a second. That's going to come down by the time they get into turn 1. It's going to be around about 4/10 of a second as George is weaving in Carlos's mirrors, just trying to force him into a mistake. So George is feeling confident. He is flying high.
And remember that Ferrari have much worse tyre wear than Mercedes, and these tyres have got to go, what, 35 laps, 36 laps or more, depending on when they put them on. So Russell will be sitting there thinking, well, maybe I can get him now, and he's really close, Harry.
Well, this is Lewis Hamilton, who is in 5th spot currently and makes the move down the inside, coming into the left-hander of turn 7 on Max Verstappen, who elected not to pit during the safety car period, stay out on his now well over 26-lap-old hard compound tyres, and is a little bit of a sitting duck. I can't believe that word came out of my mouth. Max Verstappen, a sitting duck in a Formula 1 race, as Lewis Hamilton gets past him and up into 4th. Verstappen clinging on to 5th now, but Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari will be next to make a move and is already half a second behind him as they race over the Anderson Bridge.
Yeah, it's not going to be long before Charles is through, because Max Verstappen, that Red Bull looks awful. He's all over the place, going into the corner, going out of the corner. So that Red Bull, you can actually see, we can see the graining on the tyres forming there on the Red Bull. So Max is just going to end up slipping back and back and back at the moment as he's coming under immense pressure now from Charles Leclerc.
Red Bull need a safety car, another one, don't they, really, to be able to try and sort this situation out for them. But right now that hasn't come. Every single Singapore Grand Prix has seen a safety car intervention. We have had one already, and that was Logan Sargent finding the wall down at turn 8 in the first part of this lap. He was able to continue without a front wing, but that brought out the safety car due to the sheer amount of debris that he littered onto the track. Cars diving into the pits, including Carlos Sainz, Charles Leclerc also in the Ferrari, but held a little bit longer as the 2 Mercedes had to come in as well. The 2 Red Bulls did not come into the pits, electing to try and gain track position over fresh rubber, and unfortunately now that is proving to be a little bit of a poison chalice for them as Verstappen now gets overtaken by another car. This time it's Charles Leclerc. Verstappen came out of the safety car period in 2nd. He's now down to 6th, just in front of his teammate Sergio Perez, who is about to see Fernando Alonso breeze past him in that Aston Martin, who is less than a 10th behind him in 8th. Ocon and Magnussen round out the top 10.
There's a huge queue now all aboard the Sergio Perez train. We've got Alonso, Ocon, Magnussen, Gasly and Piastri, and the list goes on. Lawson's there as well. Hulkenberg is there. remember, Alonso has got that 5-second penalty, so he's going to hope to try and clear Perez as quickly as possible and then scamper up the road. But these Red Bulls are not quick. They are just going to slip back and back through the pack. Remember, they have not pitted, so they do need to pit to get a fresher set of tyres, as Fernando Alonso has a little look down the inside at turn 14 as Piastri nearly goes into the back of Pierre Gasly under braking there, so good avoidance of making contact.
Yeah, I thought we nearly had a Michael Schumacher, Jean-Eric Verne 2012 situation on our hands there, with Schumacher spiralling into the back of the Toro Rosso driver. Not so much the case here, but easily done when the pack is so close together. And as you quite rightly say, everyone is behind Sergio Perez right now, who is 7th. Alonso is 8th. Ocon, Magnussen, Gasly, Piastri, Lawson, Hulkenberg just about with them as well, as Fernando Alonso gets the braking wrong into turn 1 and dives across to cut the chicane.
Yeah, he's managing a lot. He's very slow. Guess he's trying to back us up.
That was George Russell talking about why Carlos Sainz is slow and managing that pace, they presume. The gap between Sainz and Russell now 1.4 seconds. Fernando Alonso, having just cut the chicane, didn't gain any advantage in terms of position and is now actually under threat from Esteban Ocon, his old Alpine teammate, as they come through turn 7 into the right-hander of 8. It starts to concertina up slightly. The Spaniard, the 2-time Singapore Grand Prix winner, has it for the time being in 8th spot, but that Alpine of Ocon, who turns 27 today, is right there with him, and K-Mag in the Haas is also just behind.
Yeah, we've got a great scrap here as Leclerc is now has streamed away from Max Verstappen, and he's the gap's actually staying fairly the same compared to him and Lewis Hamilton. But this is a great scrap here for 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th. Then it goes on and on.
14, 15, 16.
Exactly, and it does all the way down to 16th place.
Oscar Piastri is looking a little bit agitated in his McLaren. He's down in 12th. Has had a bit of a tough weekend all in all. Doesn't have all the upgrades that his teammate is enjoying. His teammate Lando Norris up in 3rd. Piastri down in 12th. Had a tough qualifying as well in 17th. Bit of a victim of Lance Stroll's Q1 crash, which brought out the red flag, but Piastri was a little bit down on pace anyway. And this is the sound of the Australian rookie up through the gears, down the main straight and into the braking zone of turn 1. He is staring at the back of the Alpine of Pierre Gasly, and this is a battle over it is a battle for 11th technically, but as we've already completely told you, this is really over a battle for 7th place, which comes in the form of Sergio Perez. But that McLaren looking a little bit squirrely at the rear, but just about holding firm. Then comes Liam Lawson down in 13th, Hulkenberg 14th, Albon 15th, Joe Bottas and Sargent, the 18 drivers that remain in this race. Yuki Tsunoda, the only retirement with Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin after that big qualifying crash yesterday. He was able to get out of the car okay, and driver is okay, but he's still feeling a bit sore today, and so Aston Martin have elected to withdraw him from the race. Here's Russell in 2nd.
Keep an eye on these tyres.
These will go to the end comfortably. Especially how Sainz is driving, he's just managing big time.
So that's good news for Russell, but maybe not so much good news for Carlos Sainz. George, in terms of managing, how do you manage? Avoid lockups, avoid the squirting of the throttle and getting a kick of oversteer out of the corners, and also maybe try and step out of the slipstream, because he's still within the slipstream of Carlos Sainz, because you don't want that hot, dirty air passing over the tyres, and you can't step out the slipstream through a corner, but you can going down the straight. So maybe just moving ever so slightly out of the slipstream can help those as well. But just having a look, Fernando Alonso has dropped back now off the back of Sergio Perez, but he's still got a huge queue behind him. The gap between Alonso and Perez now is 1.3 seconds. So would this be, Andrew, would Fernando now be managing? Because I guess not. He's got that 5-second penalty. He's just clearly struggling for pace.
Yeah, I was just thinking he's not having his best race, is he, Fernando Alonso? He went cut over the pit lane entry on his way into the pits during the safety car period. He's misjudged his braking behind Perez into turn 1 2 or 3 laps ago. And he needs to clear Perez, as you were saying, Alice, and Verstappen for that matter, in front of him, because he's got to make some time to stop that 5-second penalty affecting him too much. So it's looking like a tricky afternoon, or evening I should say, for Fernando Alonso at the moment in the Aston Martin. His teammate Lance Stroll, after all, not even in the race after his crash in qualifying yesterday.
Yeah, tough weekend at the moment for Aston Martin in general, with their team principal Mike Crack with some bold, ambitious plans to try and leapfrog Ferrari and Mercedes to regain second in the constructors by the end of the year. Right now, it not going that way. Of course, technically, Red Bull could have wrapped up the constructors title this weekend only if they scored a 1-2 finish with the fastest lap, and Mercedes scored 1 point or less. But right now, Red Bull are 6th and 7th, and Mercedes are 2nd and 4th. It is only a matter of time until Red Bull do clinch the constructors, but it won't be here unless there's some dramatic changes. But we are now at about half race distance. Here is Max Verstappen.
It's like driving on ice.
Understood.
And it kind of looks that way. Yeah, it kind of looks that way, to be fair. Driving on ice can be fun at times, but certainly not if you're driving a Formula One car around the streets of Singapore. Now, Lewis Hamilton has caught the back of Lando Norris, who has caught the back of George Russell, who has now caught the back of Carlos Sainz. So this gaggle of cars here between Hamilton and Carlos Sainz, 2 seconds is the gap now.
Trains all over the shop in this race right now. Sainz heads all of them, but it's only just under 7/10 of a second in front of George Russell, Norris, Hamilton, Leclerc, the top 5, Verstappen, Perez, Alonso, Ocon, Magnussen, the top 10, and holding on nicely for the time being for a points-paying position for the Haasman. Gasly, Piastri, Lawson, Hulkenberg and Albon, the top 15. Then comes Zhou and Valtteri Bottas, the 2 Alfa Romeos at the rear of the field, only in front of Logan Sargent, who had to come in for a front wing change, was the cause for our one and only safety car so far after he found the wall. He's still in this race, but he's about 25 seconds behind Valtteri Bottas. So a tough day for the American rookie. Yuki Tsunoda, after a tough qualifying and making a mistake in his final sector, started 15th and didn't even complete 1 lap before his AlphaTauri conked out. He is out of this race, and as we've already mentioned, Lance Stroll's Aston Martin was withdrawn from the race. This is the sound of Lewis Hamilton up through the gears, through the left-hand kink that leads you to the braking zone for the final chicane. The right-hander of 16, the left-hander of 17. It spits you out oh so close to the exit wall before a short squirt on the throttle before you lift to head into turns 18 and 19. The double left-hander that sees off a lap of this Marina Bay circuit, and Lewis Hamilton down through the gears and into the braking zone, looking at the back of the McLaren of Lando Norris with a new livery this weekend. A lot of black interwoven with the papaya orange to celebrate their 60th birthday year, and Norris with upgrades in that McLaren as well, and proving to be rather handy around here.
It certainly is, but a milestone has now been reached in Formula One over this weekend. We'll hear from George.
I want to go for this win.
Yeah, we understand. We're on the same page, mate.
And of course, his Mercedes team are going to be on the same page. They're going to want to go for the win. But Fernando has just become the first driver in F1 history to complete 100,000 kilometres under race conditions. So you'd have to say that he does go down as a legend, but he's not having, as Andrew said, sort of the race of his life with that sort of error he made coming into the pit lane, which we don't really see Fernando make too many errors, and he's certainly under pressure from a huge gaggle of cars behind him at the moment.
Yeah, right now, if the race ended like this with Alonso's 5-second penalty, he would go down to, I think, around 13th, 14th position, really, because it's all so close behind him, with Ocon within a second, Magnussen within a second, Gasly, Piastri, and then Lawson's a little bit off, and Hulkenberg a couple of seconds back, so it might just peel out, but still a way to go. We are over halfway through this Singapore Grand Prix now, which has really been a fascinating one from the strategy perspective. It's been a bit like a chess game. The safety car intervention really spiced things up as most started for the pits. Others, particularly the 2 Red Bull drivers who started outside of the top 10, did not. Now, we once again have Carlos Sainz, who emerged out of the safety car period in the lead, but we have a hungry George Russell in the Mercedes, a second behind him, who wants to go for this win. Sainz and Ferrari in tyre management strategy mode, trying to figure out how they can hold on to the race win and keep a feisty George Russell behind, who has this extra set of medium compound tyres if he wants to do so, but has also said on the radio, well, right now at the pace Carlos Sainz is going and he's slowing us up, the tyres he's on right now, which are the hard compounder tyres, will happily last till the end. Movement further back in the field. Kevin Magnussen coming under pressure for the final point for P10 from Pierre Gasly. They go side by side through the right-hander of turn 8. It concertinas up. Magnussen will have the advantage. the Dane who said he was going to get elbows out to hold on for some points for Haas, who are in desperate need of some in their fight in the Constructors' Championship further down the field. They are merely a point in front of Alfa Romeo over 8th place, so it would be crucial for Kevin Magnussen to try and get any kind of point he can. At the moment he's holding on, but he is under much pressure from Gasly in 12th.
Perez is now really under pressure. The sound you can hear is Fernando Alonso, who's weaving left, weaving right, desperately trying to get past Sergio Perez as he gap opens up ever so slightly. You can really see the Red Bull struggling there. It does sort of look like it's driving on ice as they head down the straight. Now sparks fly as we're coming into 16 through 70. You can see a slight difference of line there.
It takes a lot of curve.
Fernando clearly feels that curve helps him hook the car around, whereas Perez not so much. He's not taking any curve, but he closes the gap. He's got the use of DRS. He jinks out just to try and distract the driver in front. That's the only reason that they're doing it. There's no way that he was going to be able to go down the inside, just trying to break the concentration of the driver ahead. But Sergio Perez not distracted as he goes through now turn 5 and down the straight with no DRS, but Fernando does.
Gets another dose of DRS, does Fernando Alonso, into the braking zone of turn 7, but Perez has the advantage and is able to hold on to that position. And Esteban Ocon still with them as well. He hasn't left Fernando Alonso's side one bit in this race, and they are currently, the old teammates, occupying 8th and 9th. The battle still brewing for 10th as well. Magnussen and Gasly jostling for position down there. I think Gasly briefly got in front of Magnussen, but Magnussen has now retaken that position for the time being. Just one driver out of this race, retiring, Yuki Tsunoda, and Lance Stroll withdrawn by Aston Martin. Carlos Sainz, our race leader, our pole sitter, still holds the lead just over a second, and we're just seeing a little look at how Pierre Gasly and Kevin Magnussen and their little switcheroo took place. And Gasly was down the inside coming into turn 7, and there was perhaps a little bit of contact there, forced Magnussen out wide over the rumble strip and into the curbs. Magnussen retook that position, and Sergio Perez just had a bit of a moment, didn't he, Alice?
That was a huge kick of oversteer there on the exit of turn 9. That barrier creeps up on you really quickly on the exit there, so Perez just about managed to keep it out as the battle for the lead continues. We've got I would say a 4-way scrap now, and just coming in the background is Charles Leclerc has closed down the gap now, so he's joining in. We could even have sort of a 5-way fight for the lead. And how often do we say that?
This is what happens when you take Red Bull and Max Verstappen out of it. We've been saying it all season long. It would be a cracker of a season. It has been a cracker of a season when you look, unfortunately, at the battle for second. But we are now seeing what it would be like if Verstappen and Perez and Red Bull weren't as dominant. Wide and deep for Kevin Magnussen coming through turn 7, and that has unfortunately lost him many positions. Gasly goes through, Piastri goes through, Lawson goes through, and Hulkenberg all go through. Alex Albon gets the job done, and it goes from bad to worse. And Kevin Magnussen, I think, a victim of his own defending there, fighting and holding on for so long, unable to hold on too long. Sainz currently leads Russell, Norris, Hamilton, Leclerc. It's lap 36. Sainz, though, just a second in front of Russell for the time being. Sainz then is leading. Sorry, just a little update into the 5 Live football there for you. Back on those Kinos who are with us on 5 Sport Extra. We were just seeing how Kevin Magnussen's fall from grace came to be, and it all started as really in turn 1, where he went wide, had to rejoin round the little arrow that they are forced to, and that put him on the back foot. And then on the inside coming into turn 7 off the back of Raffles Boulevard, Magnussen getting his braking too late, and through went Gasly, and off went Magnussen.
Yes, as that incident where we did see Gasly forced his way past. Kevin Magnussen's been noted for forcing another driver off the track. I mean, yeah, it's a tough one. Gasly had his nose in front coming into the apex, but he wasn't really going to stop. So interested to see what the stewards do there, as now Fernando Alonso dives down the inside of Sergio Perez. Does he make it stick? Yes, just about, but Sergio's coming back at him, Harry.
Down the inside, does he try and get it back? No, he doesn't. Perez holds Aston Martin's Alonso off, and who's going to come and play? It's Esteban Ocon in the Alpine, who wants to make use of this as they head into the left-hander of turn 9. Perez holding on for dear life. Alonso with a little kick on the steering wheel. The rear's not holding out, and now Ocon is going to slide down the inside into the left-hander of turn 10. Esteban Ocon in the Alpine makes the move stick as they fly over the Anderson Bridge. It's Perez in 7, Ocon now in 8, but Ocon has to go super defensive into the hairpin as Alonso tries to fight back at him, but the Spaniard hasn't got it within him. Down the Esplanade drive straight, and it's Ocon who gained the position there and gained massively from Fernando Alonso's attempt at passing Perez, and in doing so, Alonso loses out in the process.
Wow, that was brave stuff from the birthday boy, Esteban Ocon there. Held it round the outside, took full advantage, and now that brings the other Alpine of Pierre Gasly into play. Remember, Alonso does have that 5-second penalty, so that will put him down the order anyway, but he put up a very good fight, and that has now released Ocon, as we hear from the race leader.
So that's Carlos Sainz just saying, let me know when you think it's good to push. I should have some more pace in hand. It was a bit difficult for us to hear, so I don't know if that was difficult for you as well. But Sainz then just under 7/10 the gap between himself and George Russell. And we very much believe that Sainz and Ferrari have been just holding off their pace for the time being and trying to hold on to this. Russell, though, has been lurking and has not left his side and is now back under a second the gap between Sainz and Russell. Norris is third, Hamilton, Leclerc the top 5. Then comes Verstappen, and Perez is doing a good job to hold on to 7th with hard compound tyres that are 37 laps old, in front of Ocon, who has now got ahead of Fernando Alonso, who is in 9th. Gasly rounds out the top 10. Piastri, Lawson, Hulkenberg, Albon, Zhou the top 15. Magnussen fighting all he could for a final point, now down to 16th in front of Bottas and Sargent. No Tsunoda, he has retired from this race, and Aston Martin's Lance Stroll was withdrawn. Lap 38 of 62, here's George Russell.
Sainz reporting he still has a second of pace in hand.
George Russell there. I'm always so impressed with the conversations they can hold while doing 200 to 300 kilometres an hour around the street circuits, and just putting up the pressure for Ferrari and Carlos Sainz. There's a little bit of movement down in the Red Bull garage where they stack the tyres. I wonder, had they held on for all they can? Neither Red Bull coming into the pits this time around, but are we anticipating a Red Bull stop within the next couple of laps? They have been doing a mighty job to hold on to these tyres for as long as they have been.
Yeah, they have. They've done a great job, to be honest. There's around about 28 seconds they will lose, so that will drop both drivers way down the pack, but they will have a fresher set of tyres to bolt on and come out with some good pace, that is for sure. But under a lot of pressure now is Sergio Perez as he runs down to turn 7.
Here he comes. This is the sound of Esteban Ocon, who takes the racing line into turn 7. Perez has to defend, but that leaves him rather tight coming into turn 8. Ocon slides underneath him, gets more traction out of the corner as they hurtle towards the left-hander of turn 9. Lovely stuff from Esteban Ocon. Wonderful racecraft from the birthday boy, who makes the move stick. And now Alonso isn't going to waste any time. He wants to get through on Perez as well, but can't quite do it as they now hurtle towards the Anderson Bridge. Ocon getting up into 7th.
That was textbook overtaking there, as he just made sure that he forced Perez to defend into 7. That made him run slightly wide 8. Then Esteban had the racing line for the entry of 8, and then he got the cutback, as now he loses another place to Sergio Perez, as round the outside down the straight into turn 14 goes Fernando Alonso, and he's about to fall back even more as Gasly's going to have a little look round the outside of the flat-out kink at 15, which then puts him on the inside for turn 16. So a nightmare lap for for Sergio Perez?
I think his tyres have screamed enough now, and I think he'll be told to box, and he is indeed told to come into the pits, having lost those positions. Sergio Perez peels off into the pit lane. He just about manages to keep it within the lines and not do a Fernando Alonso and slide over the exit curb, and in he comes Rosanna.
Absolutely straight into the Red Bull pit box there. They're the first garage you come to in the pit lane. The guys are there, the tyres go on, it's onto that medium tyre. He nursed that hard tyre for 38 laps, and here he goes then, ready, out into the fast lane of the pit lane, and I imagine Max Verstappen will need to be coming in fairly shortly too.
Yeah, 2.3 second stop for Checo Perez, so we'll see where he peels out. It'll be plumb last as he comes out. Max Verstappen then, we wait to see when he will be in. He's currently in 6th spot, but Ocon then up into 7th, Alonso 8th, Gasly 9th, Piastri gets promoted into the top 10, and just on cue, Max Verstappen is told to box, so that means you're going to come in for a pit stop and change onto your new tyres, of which will be the medium compounder tyre. His teammate has already switched on to them and has come out, about 6 seconds behind Logan Sargent. It's down in 18th, so this is disaster from Red Bull. It has not gone their way. One bit as lap 41 of 62 begins, and this is the sound of Max Verstappen, who's kind of in no man's land at the moment. He's 11 seconds off the back of Leclerc. He's got 8 seconds over Ocon, and you can just see him, Alice, coming out of the final chicane and not able to put the full whack down, and he can barely get it turned in for the pit lane entrance. He doesn't slide all 4 wheels or even 2 wheels over the red and white rumble strips, but that was close as he comes into the pits. Let's head down to Rosanna.
Yeah, reminiscent of what happened to Fernando Alonso in the Aston Martin. Of course, he picked up a 5-second penalty for that. The medium tyres have gone on. It was a 3-second stop time for Max Verstappen back into the fast lane of the pit lane. But where's this going to put him out, Harry?
He's tumbling down. Joe goes through. Magnussen should go through as well. And he does indeed, as this is Verstappen trundling. It's a long old drive, 60 kilometres an hour, the pit lane speed limiter, as he then gets out and back up to racing speed. You kind of cut out turn 1. You have your own turn 1, and he feeds out into turn 3, and Verstappen then feeds out behind Magnussen and in front of Logan Sargent. He's about 6.5 seconds behind Magnussen, 6 seconds clear of Sargent. But the two Red Bulls on lap 41 of 62 are 15th and 17th.
I mean, that's a sentence I never thought I'd hear you say all season long, Harry. It's not been their day, has it? As he's falling all the way down the hill. They will have the pace now, but this battle at front, I tell you what, George Russell is doing a great job of managing his tyres, because he's kept the gap fairly similar. Once Sainz gains a couple of tenths, then so does George Russell. When he loses, again, so does Russell. So the pressure is still on. So there's still a long way left to go. There's 20 laps remaining in this race, so we've still got plenty of time as the DRS is wide open on George Russell's car as he streams down into turn 1. They're all kind of keeping it nice and tidy, neat and tidy, just to really try and make sure they look after the tyres. But now Lando Norris is within DRS reach and in the DRS zone of George Russell.
Sainz leads, Russell, Norris, Hamilton, Leclerc, the top 5. Ocon, Alonso, Gasly, Piastri, Lawson, the top 10. Hulkenberg, Albon, Joe, Magnussen, Verstappen, 15th. Sargent, Perez, 17th. Bottas, 18th. Tsunoda retiring from this race. Lance Stroll withdrawn by Aston Martin. Thing is, as Russell and Norris are now right onto the back of Carlos Sainz, either Sainz, could he be playing an absolute blinder here? If he's just managing within his pace and can just go to the very end, Russell's going to have to make the move at some stage, and he will get the benefit of DRS, which Carlos Sainz will not have. Lando Norris will as well at this current rate. They're all within a second of each other, but he hasn't been able to do that yet.
No, as I said earlier, catching is one thing, overtaking, certainly around like a circuit like this with DRS or without DRS, is another thing, as we hear from Alonso.
Day goes from bad to worse from Fernando Alonso, undrivable. He is still in 7th though, half a second in front of Pierre Gasly, but he's losing ground now to Esteban Ocon, who managed to get in front of him after a long dice with Alonso, and Perez too, who then peeled off into the pits. So Alonso not happy then in that Aston Martin. Sainz comes across the line once again, lap 43 of 62 here in Singapore at the Marina Bay Street Circuit. A slightly altered layout this year. They've gotten rid of the Marina Bay area. Here is Russell.
Norris has DRS. Let's start pushing Sainz along now.
So now George has got to be careful here, because if he doesn't push Sainz, he could fall victim to Norris.
Yeah, not only is he going to be looking ahead, but he's going to be looking in his mirrors. He's in a sandwich at the moment, and that's adds to the difficulty of racing around this circuit, as certainly Norris now has really closed the gap down. 0.6 of a second behind George Russell. George has turned up the gas as well. He's now got it down to 6/7 of a second.
Something's happened to Esteban Ocon. He's falling down the timing screens, and he pulls off onto the side of the road on the exit of the pit lane. So he's made it through the left-hander of turn 1, but then had to pull off. Let's hear from him. Esteban Ocon, and you can hear the frustration in his voice. The birthday boy was having a brilliant race, and that has now ended. Steering wheel out of the car as a bit of steam comes off of the heat from the tyres. That's the yellow flag out, and that will surely, Alice, bring out a safety car, and that's going to throw everything up in the air. Max Verstappen just got through on Kevin Magnussen for 13th.
Yeah, so that's going to benefit those that, if they get it timed right, to come into the pits, and that's going to really help George Russell as well. But that's disaster. He didn't fit. Both Alpines didn't finish this race last year, and Esteban Ocon was clearly one of those. As now, look how busy the pit lane is. Everyone out. It's virtual safety car at the moment.
Okay, so it's not full safety car. The virtual safety car, you still can get away with a 15-second loss in the pit stop, though, Andrew.
But they've timed it just as the leaders went past the pits, so it's not going to help Russell at all, I don't think, because, well, it depends on how long the VSC lasts.
Well, that's a very good point. Esteban Ocon is still in his car, and he's probably just waiting the all clear to move, but he is now removing his headrest and actually throws it out of the car in anger, and puts the steering wheel back into the slot, as you are told to do, as the marshals come to his aid and get ready to move that stricken Alpine to the nearest exit they can. But that has neutralised the race then, so all the cars must slow down and adopt a mandated lap time that they have to go to. But we are getting some pit stop action. Alex Albon comes in.
I tell you what, there's going to be questions up and down the pit lane about that decision. Why, when there's a safety car for Logan Sargent dragging his front wing around the track, and then they release the safety car while there's still carbon fibre shards visible on the track, why isn't there a virtual safety car when there's a car parked at the pit lane exit?
I want to see.
And why did they time it exactly when they did? I mean, obviously the FIA will say, we don't look at what's happening in the race, we make the decisions in real time based on the safety situation, there's nothing else is important at all. But the teams will be looking at and thinking, come on.
You may have heard just in the background the sound of struggling Alpine of Esteban Ocon, which eventually conked out in around about 6th gear. Now he's peeled off. They're not closing the pit lane exit, obviously, because Albon came in, but he is right on the exit. So it's another curious decision to make that, Alice.
I mean, yeah, there is room there for them to get out. They've
obviously marshals have to come out and move it.
Yeah, they do, and we have drivers that are coming into pit lane now. The leaders are just going through that final chicane at 16-17.
Sainz is driving unnecessarily slow. He's 3-4 seconds up on his delta.
So yeah, you have to follow a delta, and you can't drive unnecessarily slowly, and you can't drive too quickly, as that looks like to me from the camera on board we're seeing is George Russell is in the pits.
Russell pits, Sainz, Norris, Leclerc all stay out. The two Mercedes coming in then
for their new sets of medium tyres.
Lap 45 of 62, and we have the virtual safety car out, which has thrown things up in the air. Our race leader, Carlos Sainz, has stayed out. He was under pressure from George Russell in the Mercedes, who has come into the pit lane. It'll be an interesting one to see how this feeds out for the rest of the race, with 62 laps in total, but it's Sainz who leads Norris, leads Leclerc. .45 of 62 then. So, let's just recap what's happened over the last couple of moments then. Sorry, we have to do another little link into 5 Live. As Alonso comes into the pits and serves the 5-second time penalty. So comes in, no one can touch the car, and then changes it. into the change to the soft compound tyre, but it's slow on the front right, and there's questions being asked, and the rear right, they can't get it on. The jack has fallen off the rear, Alice.
Yeah, it has. So they're lifting it up now, with two of them helping to pull down the rear jack. So an issue, maybe a rear jack failure, as the green flag is now being waved. Everyone is allowed to go at full racing speed, but Fernando's race has just gone from bad to worse there.
Right, lap 45 of 62, green flag racing back underway. Sainz leads Norris, Leclerc in third. George Russell and Lewis Hamilton did come into the pits. George Russell armed with a fresh set of medium tyres in fourth. He's 14 seconds behind Leclerc. Hamilton is fifth. Gasly, Piastri, Lawson, Hulkenberg, Zhou, the top 10.
Mercedes pitted, new medium.
I think it is the right choice. Consider even a lap later.
We'll come back to you. So we are staying out.
So Leclerc sounded like he wanted to come into the pits, but he was denied that choice by Ferrari. He stays out. And I suppose Ferrari can try and use Leclerc as a bit of a block to Russell and hold him up for as long as they can and just keep Sainz in that lead until the very end.
Yeah, I think it's going to be hard for George now to try and close that gap down. It's, as you said, it's 14 seconds is the interval between him and Leclerc, and then Leclerc has got to the lead about 3-4 seconds, as we're seeing Esteban Ocon wander back now. He's just coming back into the pit lane, keeping his helmet on, but he is waving to the camera. But I think it's going to be tough for Russell, because as I've been saying, it's easy to catch, but passing is another thing, and especially when Leclerc is going to be there making it really difficult for Russell to get past.
Esteban Ocon then walks forlornly back to the pits, his second retirement in a row, Rosanna.
Yeah, and the team telling me that it's a suspected gearbox issue, but they're going to have to investigate, obviously, fully after the race. We've still got quite a while to go, only lap 46 of 62, but disappointing for Esteban Ocon on his birthday when we'd seen such racecraft from the French driver.
Yes, the 27-year-old now Frenchman will have to do some birthday celebrations tonight to try and make up for a loss of a points finish. It looked like it was going to be good racing from Esteban Ocon. Lap 46 of 62, approaching 75% distance in this race. Carlos Sainz leads Lando Norris, and in that virtual safety car period which we had for that stricken Alpine of Esteban Ocon, they elected not to come into the pits, as did Charles Leclerc. He stayed out. The two Mercedes did, though, come into the pits. George Russell, armed with some new medium tyres, has just set the fastest lap and is currently fourth in front of Lewis Hamilton, who is fifth. He also came in. Gasly sixth, who has rocketed up the timing screens, along with Piastri, Lawson, Hulkenberg and Zhou. It's all helped them out to get into the top 10. Verstappen, though, now up into 11th. Albon, Perez in 13th. Magnussen, Alonso with a disaster of a stop, plus a 5-second time penalty, now finds himself down in 15th, only in front of Bottas and Sargent.
Now, Harry, the teams reckon that the overtaking delta, that means how much of a lap time advantage do you need to be able to pass a car. We've got a yellow flag in Sector 3 for some reason. We'll have to see what that's about. It's about 1.5 seconds.
I think it's Fernando Alonso who finds himself spinning off the circuit, but he's managed to keep it going again. And I think, is that coming? It's in Sector 3, isn't it? So it's towards the back end of the lap as he now comes. It's the new 400-metre straight he's approaching now. So he's found turn 14 tricky, and we haven't seen how that incident started, but he's able to get going as he now makes his way through the 16-17 chicane. But a brief yellow flag out there, but a day from bad to worse for Fernando Alonso.
I think he just locked up there, but I bet Mercedes were desperately looking, going, no, please, not a safety car, because obviously that would have then helped those in front, and they really would have lost out. But the last lap there, George Russell was 1.6 seconds quicker than Carlos Sainz, but we've got 15 laps to go.
Down the inside for Max Verstappen, though, across the Anderson Bridge and into the hairpin. It's on the inside of the Chinese Alfa Romeo driver, Zhou Guanyu. Verstappen now up into the top 10.
But is that enough? Is that enough to close the gap down? 14 seconds is the gap to Carlos Sainz. So George has got to almost pump in qualifying lap after qualifying lap as he goes deep. He's 2 seconds now quicker nearly on that last lap compared to Carlos Sainz. It's going to be hard. I think I'm not sure it was correct. decision really to pit. We'll find out very soon, but it's going to make it very difficult.
I think they've just decided it's win or bust, basically. They thought they're not going to pass Sainz on track with the same age tyres for the remaining 15 laps of the race or whatever. We're getting a replay of Alonso here, Alice.
Yeah, and the car just doesn't seem to slow down very well. I wonder if the brakes maybe got slightly hot where he was sat in the pit lane with that issue with the rear jack for a little bit too long. He didn't necessarily lock any wheels up. He just sort of sailed on past. Sorry, Andrew.
Yeah, and they'd be thinking, well, we're not going to pass him on the track with the same age tyres, so we can't. Okay, we're going to lose second place potentially and convert that. Here's Sainz's radio.
Need faster if you can till the end.
Okay, so they're thinking about Russell and the likelihood of him catching them and trying to manage that pace so that Russell can't catch them. We'll see whether he can manage it. Russell and Mercedes are just thinking, well, stop it, let's go for it. We will lose a second place potentially, but we might get a win.
This is the sound of Max Verstappen coming over the Anderson Bridge into the hairpin, up through the gears, and he makes easy work of Nico Hülkenberg's 9th place, which now becomes the Dutchman's as he, under the braking zone, gets in front of the German racer. Hülkenberg down to 10th now, Verstappen up into 9th now. He's been able to get rid of those hard compound tyres that he was on for a long, long time, and now on the fresh medium compounded tyre. His next target, Liam Lawson, the man who knocked him out of Q2 by 0.07 of a second, the Kiwi rookie, in only his 3rd race, replacing Daniel Ricciardo, who in turn replaced Nick de Vries, comes down the main straight now into the braking zone for turn 1 and is less than 4 seconds in front of Max Verstappen, who you can just about see coming into the final corner in the background of the Lawson shot we're seeing. So Lawson then having a quietly impressive race, didn't have the best of starts, fell down the order quite quickly, but good strategy calls, good pace so far. Has seen that AlphaTauri manage to get back up into 8th, while others have either had long pit stops, fallen out of this race. He has gained, along with the likes of Oscar Piastri, who is up in 7th in that McLaren, and Pierre Gasly now up into the top 6. So perhaps a little crumb of comfort for Alpine after losing Esteban Ocon in this race. Gasly still in the points for Alpine.
Yeah, and Liam Lawson's up there in 8th position as well, doing a great job as the rookie. But actually looking at the times, Harry, Lewis Hamilton is the fastest man on track at the moment. He was about half a second quicker than George Russell that last lap. So George seems to have lost a little bit of pace, which is a bit bizarre. He's still quicker than Charles Leclerc in front by at least about 2 seconds, and then something similar compared to Carlos Sainz. So the gap now between him and Charles Leclerc is just over sort of 5.5 seconds.
It's going to be really interesting to see when Russell can get onto the back of Leclerc and how much Leclerc fights it. He is at a disadvantage purely from life in that tyre. Leclerc on the hard compounder tyre, Russell on new mediums, but Leclerc, who has played the team game fairly well so far today, has done exactly what has been asked of him. Can he get his elbows out and hold back Russell for as long as possible to give Carlos Sainz, his teammate, every chance of being the first non-Red Bull driver and team to win a Formula One race since the Brazilian Grand Prix in 2022? Let's not forget Lando Norris in the McLaren, who is having a sublime and actually rather quiet race, but has quietly worked himself up into 2nd in an upgraded McLaren.
Yeah, he's doing a really good job there in 2nd place. Someone that has just turned up the gas would be Charles Leclerc. He's just set a personal best in that first sector, which is actually only 2/10 off the sector of sector 1 that George Russell has just set. So some life maybe still in Charles' hard tyres, as a pit lane incident involving Perez and Albon has been noted for a virtual safety car infringement, but Max Verstappen has now caught the back of Liam Lawson and putting him under immense pressure.
He is. I wonder if Lawson will fight this too hard as they come over the Anderson Bridge into the braking zone for the hairpin in the left-hander, and the DRS zone awaits you on the run down to Esplanade Drive. DRS, the rear wing slot, opens up for Max Verstappen, who gets into the slipstream of Lawson, who does defend down the inside, the Kiwi, getting his elbows out, but he runs a little bit deep. That allows Verstappen to cut back nicely, gets a slightly better run through 14, the left-hand kink of 15. Verstappen now will have the inside into the turn 16 chicane, and Verstappen breezes past Lawson, who put up a little bit of a fight. Not too much, but just enough to showcase that, well, I can have a fight with Max Verstappen if I want to.
Yeah, I may be a new boy, but I'm here to race, just so you know. But nice move there from Max Verstappen, as the sound you can hear is riding on board as we're just checking out a replay. He tried to get the cutback there at 14. Liam Lawson came across and said, no you don't, and then he just gave him enough room through the kink at 15 to allow Max to dive down the inside and then have the inside line there for 16.
1.4 seconds the gap between Carlos Sainz, who leads this race, and Lando Norris in the McLaren in second. Then comes Charles Leclerc, George Russell and Lewis Hamilton on new medium tyres, fourth and fifth. Hamilton with the fastest lap as it currently stands. Pierre Gasly in the Alpine is sixth, in front of Oscar Piastri in the McLaren seventh. Max Verstappen has just got himself up into eighth, in front of Liam Lawson. Nico Hülkenberg desperately holding on for the final points for Haas at the moment, in front of arch rivals Alfa Romeo. Just a point splits them in the Constructors' Championship right now. Joe half a second behind Hülkenberg and will be doing everything, having been re-signed by the Alfa Romeo team for another year. The Chinese racer trying to get back into the points. He's in 11th, in front of Albon. Perez languishing down in 13th. Then comes Magnussen, Bottas the top 15. Sargent and Fernando Alonso now 17th and last of the runners after a long pit stop, a 5-second time penalty, and locking up into turn 14 and having to find a nice 360 spin and rejoin. But he is now plumb last out of the 17 cars still in this race. Out Esteban Ocon and Yuki Tsunoda with retirements, and Lance Stroll was withdrawn from this race after his big crash in yesterday's qualifying. We're just waiting for a little update in 5 Live. If you're wondering why we went all quiet on you, they've been coming to and fro. So we're on lap 52 at the moment of 62. Sainz does still lead. Norris is keeping him honest. All eyes on George Russell and the Mercedes for the time being as they try and make up the pace gap on these new medium compound of tyres, currently down in 4th and 5th. Gasly is 6th, Piastri 7th, Verstappen, Lawson, Hülkenberg the top 10 as team principal Fred Vasseur for Ferrari watches on from the pit wall with 10 laps to go of the Singapore Grand Prix, and that gap is still able to be held between Sainz and Norris. 10 laps to go here in Singapore. Carlos Sainz is doing everything he can in that Ferrari to hold on for a first non-Red Bull race win since 2022. He's 1.5 seconds in front of Norris, Leclerc, but all eyes on George Russell's Mercedes in 4th and on new medium tyres. Well, we got there in the end, didn't we? Apologies for that. We're back here on 5 Sport Extra. For those of you, the true F1 fans are with us. With myself, Harry Benjamin, racing driver Alice Powell alongside me. The BBC's chief F1 writer, Andrew Benson, is also here. Rosanna Tennant down in the pits. And, well, I think I've said it about 5 times in the last 5 minutes. All eyes on George Russell, who is in 4th and is now caught right up to the back of Charles Leclerc, Alice.
He needs to clear him quickly, but we have a yellow flag and it's briefly gone in now. He needs to clear him quickly, Harry, because he is losing a lot of time underneath the gearbox of Charles Leclerc. He will then have DRS in a moment coming on the exit of turn 13. He sets his car up perfectly. Charles Leclerc defends ever so slightly, so he's going to have to brave it round the outside here. DRS wide open.
Leclerc defends, though, that inside line. We were wondering how much is Leclerc going to defend this position, but he has to go deep. That gives Russell a nicer, tighter line through the corner. The left-hand kink of 15 comes at them, and Russell is through. Leclerc tries to fight him back, weaving left, weaving right, into the braking zone for the turn 16-17 chicane as the sparks fly under the lights here in Singapore. George Russell gets him up into 3rd spot. Leclerc down to 4th, and now has to keep looking in his mirrors because Lewis Hamilton, the 7-time champion in the Mercedes, is coming for him, currently in 5th as they cross the line for lap 54 of 62. There was a brief yellow flag out. I'm told it's for Valtteri Bottas, who is now retired from this race, but I think he peeled off after turn 14, so he was able to get that car out of the way of any oncoming traffic.
Yeah, so good job there by Bottas. So we don't have a halt to this great battle that we're going to have. So George now has bolted. Lewis Hamilton is going to brave it round the outside. DRS open. Does he sweep round the outside of turn 7? Yes, he does. So a great move there by Lewis Hamilton. He's in front and he can chase down. The two Mercedes are going to be going for it now. They're charging down Lando Norris. But actually Lewis is slightly quicker than George.
We're just getting another look of how that happened, but the two Mercedes then able to get through on Leclerc, who I think put up as much of a fight as he could do. We saw when Russell came through that Leclerc just couldn't get down on the power quick enough. He was starting to spin up his rear wheels, had to do a correction to the steering wheel. His tyres are a lot older than the Mercedes, 33-lap old tyres, and this is the sound of how Lewis Hamilton got through down towards Raffles Boulevard into the braking zone on the left-hander of turn 7, and the move was done with DRS aided to boot. So now Russell up into third and chasing down Lando Norris. He's bringing his teammate Lewis Hamilton with him. Sainz with 1.3 seconds the gap to Norris. That is your top 4. Leclerc 5th, Gasly, Piastri, Verstappen, Lawson and Albon the top 10. And Verstappen continuing his march up through the field in what has been one of the hardest races for Red Bull in a very, very long time. Verstappen now looking at the inside of Piastri, down into the right-hander of turn 14 as he gets through on the McLaren of Oscar Piastri, who has to concede that 7th place, and Piastri now down into 8th.
So we've got 7 laps of the race remaining, Harry. I think George needs to find a little bit. Yeah, it's going to be tight. He needs to find a little bit more pace if he wants to win this race. He is 5.2 seconds behind Lando Norris. Last lap there, he was 1.1 seconds quicker.
7 seconds, Norris.
Is it too big a gap for us to catch?
Negative. Let's go for it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they can catch Norris, but I think it was going to be tough for them to catch Carlos Sainz. The gap is coming down and down and down, but I just don't think it seems to be enough.
Oh, you cannot call this Formula One race right now. Sainz has the advantage, but it's only a smidge over a second. But how much is he managing this pace? How much has Sainz got in hand? Has he got anything in hand? The questions that remain to be answered. Norris is second, and he will not be easy to overtake. He will get his elbows out. He'll want a podium finish for himself to get back onto the podium for the first time since Hungary for the British racer, in front of his compatriot George Russell. Hamilton 4th, Leclerc in 5th. A reminder, though, that the two Mercedes of Russell and Hamilton did come into the pits under the virtual safety car, so they only have 10-lap-old medium compound tyres, the faster of the tyres anyway, but also much younger than Sainz and Norris ahead, who are on 34-lap-old hard compound tyres, make that 35-lap-old as we cross the line for lap 56 of 62. Norris still keeping within a second, but the Mercedes are coming. Gasly, Verstappen, Piastri, Lawson, Albon round out the top 10.
George has just found some pace from somewhere, so he's into the 136s now, 136.9, with Lando Norris losing a little bit of pace. He just did his previous lap on 138.4. So George is going to be within striking distance very, very quickly. I expect in the next sort of 2 to 3 laps, and there we can see they're bunching up now as the McLaren McLaren staff watch on in the garage, all nervous there with their fingers crossed, but the Mercedes are coming.
Further down, there is a nice battle for the final points-paying positions, which is currently between Alex Albon and Sergio Perez. Albon ahead of Perez in his Williams, but only by 0.8 of a second. Perez has gained ground in the last few laps on Joe and Nico Hülkenberg. Both of those, the Haas and the Alfa Romeo, outside of the points. Lawson still clinging on for what could be his first points in his Formula One career. Just 3 races in for the Kiwi, substitute for Daniel Ricciardo, turning heads left, right and centre, currently in 9th. Piastri's had a good recovery, having started down in 17th in this race. He's up into 8th. Verstappen, his next pass will come in the form of Pierre Gasly, but he's still a couple of seconds behind the Alpine.
Yeah, he is, but
about a second, sorry.
our eyes are watching, glued to this battle. We hear from Sainz.
Got up to Lando every lap.
Copy it.
Just get your head down, mate. I think you just need to go because these Mercedes are coming. Don't step away from the radio at any point for the remainder of this race because the gap's coming down and down and down. Russell on the 12-lap-old medium tyres, of course, as you said, Harry, pitted under virtual safety car, and 36-lap-old hard tyres for those two in front. And Norris now 9/10 is the gap, so he is within DRS bite of our race leader, Carlos Sainz.
It's just dipped over a second again. He is so close. Will he get the DRS down the next straight? We'll have to wait and see as they come towards the left-hander of turn 10. But all four cars are in the same shot. Sainz, Norris, Russell, Hamilton. They're all hurtling down to turn 10 through the left-hander. Then the Anderson Bridge approaches as they make their way down into the left-hander. Turn 13 hairpin and towards Esplanade Drive and turn 14 where there is another dose of DRS. Former teammates, Sainz and Norris, very good friends off track as well, currently fighting it out for the race win. But
got no
two
friends
Mercedes,
on the racetrack though. Once that helmet is on and that visor is down, you've got no friends out there whatsoever.
Absolutely, and we've seen how well Carlos Sainz can get his elbows out and defend, even from his own teammate last time out in Monza, and he will not see his maybe one and only chance at a win this year slip easily away from him with 5 laps to go. This is the sound of Max Verstappen up through the gears down towards turn 14. He'll go round the outside of Pierre Gasly, gets squeezed to the wall. Gasly not making it easy for the Dutchman, but Verstappen with better tyres, younger tyres, fresher rubber, better traction up through the gears, gets 6 spots and takes it away from Pierre Gasly.
Yeah, DRS is now wide open for Lando Norris. 0.6 of a second is the gap. Could Lando, we've been saying about Russell and Hamilton and Sainz, but could Lando grab his first ever Formula One win? He's come so close at times, hasn't he? But Lewis Hamilton has just set the fastest first sector of this race and has really now closed the gap up to George Russell. The gap was 2 seconds. And Lewis Hamilton, where's that come from? He's found some pace and closed the gap.
Lando 0.8 behind, 0.8 with DRS. Russell no DRS.
Yeah, it's on purpose.
Copy that.
Okay, so Sainz with a plan then, an action plan. But right now, the battle for first here at the Singapore Grand Prix, Formula One in 2023, is between 4 different drivers, 3 different teams, and not a Red Bull or a Max Verstappen in sight. Carlos Sainz leads in the Ferrari from pole. Lando Norris in the McLaren is second. George Russell in the Mercedes is third, and Lewis Hamilton is right there as well in fourth. He has the fastest lap. The 2 Mercedes have fresher rubber than Norris and Sainz, and they're all together now as they come through the final couple of corners to complete lap 58 of 62. 3 British drivers battling it out for the race win.
Now this is clever from Carlos Sainz. He's just said that's on purpose. He's just made a DRS train. So that's now going to be harder for Hamilton and for Russell to overtake Norris. Okay, puts him slightly at risk to Sainz, but we know what it's like. We've seen them at Monza, don't we? We've got a DRS train going on.
No one's able to pass anybody because everybody gets the same advantage.
And now we have a yellow flag in sector 2, and DRS in that sector has been disabled. Yeah,
and it hasn't come out straight away. We're hearing it might be Alex Albon who has stopped at turn 13. So we'll see if he's able to find a way off the track like Valtteri Bottas was, but that might bide Sainz some time. He has managed to find a way off the track, and it's a green flag declared again. So Albon sadly then out of this race. That promotes Perez up into the top 10. Sainz on the radio though, saying his tyres are finished as he tries strategically to hold on to this win and is forming a DRS train behind him. But it's a train full of drivers. I wouldn't really want that close behind me if I was Carlos Sainz. Lando Norris, Russell, George Addition, and Lewis Hamilton, the top 4. Less than a second between them all. But side by side, Norris now coming under pressure from George Russell. Has this worked out for Carlos Sainz? Lando Norris under pressure for second place as George Russell sweeps round the outside. Norris cuts him off though as they hurtle down the new 400-metre straight and into turn 16, the final chicane that spits you out to the exit wall, and then you have a short squirt on the throttle to the final double left-handers of turns 18 and 19. Norris manages to hold on in front of Russell, who is now having to look in his mirror here is because his teammate Lewis Hamilton is right there, down through the gears, into the braking zone of turn 1. And while that battle has commenced, Carlos Sainz has been able to have a little bit of breathing room now. Russell gets a little bit squirrely coming out of turn 3. That puts him at risk from losing third to Lewis Hamilton. Round turn 4 we go, and into the next dose of DRS, down Raffles Boulevard, through 5, the right-hander of 6. Russell, I think, just about holds on to third for now. Lewis Hamilton, does he stick a nose down the inside as they come into turn 7? No, they don't. It's Norris second, Russell third, Hamilton fourth.
Yeah, I'm imagining George Russell's going to be on the blow as Lewis Hamilton looks to go down the inside. That's not a place that you overtake there down into turn 13. He's going to be on the blower soon, saying, what is he doing? They're slowing each other down, the Mercedes. They need to try, it's hard to work together, but try and maximise the DRS zones, because now this has allowed Lando Norris to escape a little bit down the road. So the gap's opened up between these two, but it's soon will close down because of the DRS. But they've just now lost themselves about half a lap.
And everybody except Sainz in this gaggle of cars gets that DRS in the allotted zones where they can press the button that opens the slot in the rear wing. The drag reduction system then acts, especially if you get the slipstream from the car in front. You get an extra few kph down the main straight to allow you a straight line speed advantage. It then closes that DRS slot under braking. You cannot open it until the next allocated DRS zone, and only when you are within a second of the car in front, and which these four all certainly are. But Carlos Sainz will not get that benefit because he is at the front of the queue, but right now is holding on. Lap 61 of 62. Sainz leads Norris, Russell and Hamilton all in the fight for the win here. Leclerc 16 seconds back in 5th. Verstappen, Gasly, Piastri, Perez and Liam Lawson round out the top 10 of the point scorers. Magnussen's magically back up to 11th. Albon is 12th. Hulkenberg, Joe, Sargent the top 15. Alonso 16th and last in this race. Bottas is out. Ocon is out, as is Yuki Tsunoda out of this race. Lance Stroll was withdrawn by Aston Martin after his crash in qualifying yesterday. Alice, Ferrari versus McLaren versus Mercedes. 4 different drivers, 3 different teams, not a Red Bull in sight. This is what we have been craving. Take nothing away from Red Bull and their sheer dominance and magnificent display of racecraft and engineering that has seen them achieve the unformidable and winning every race so far this year.
Copy that.
Right now, it seems that run of Red Bull winning is about to come to an end. That was Lewis Hamilton on the radio telling his engineer Bono to tell George Russell, his teammate, to pick up the pace.
Yeah, Lewis is right on the back of George now. Lewis has looked really faster since they've gone on to these medium tyres as they're coming down into the last chicane at 16, 17 before they bleed out and close the lap, which will then be the final lap. So one last attack, but Lando's made a mistake. He's dropped back ever so slightly. He's dropped out, actually, of DRS zones. He's under huge pressure from George Russell heading down into turn 1, but he just about manages to stay in front, but he's going to be under pressure again coming down into turn 5.
We are on the final lap for the Singapore Grand Prix here at the Marina Bay Street Circuit, where Red Bull and Max Verstappen have struggled from the get-go. They are not in contention for the win. They're not even in contention for a podium. That is all still up for grabs. 3 different teams, 4 different drivers, and how the podium will look is still very much up in the air. Right now, it is Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari who has the advantage. He started on pole and has the lead as it stands, but less than a second covers Lando Norris in second in the McLaren. George Russell and Lewis Hamilton, the 2 Mercedes, tucked in right behind, but George Russell goes straight into the wall, coming into the left-hander of turn 10. Russell finds the wall in the background. Hamilton skates through, and will that mean Carlos Sainz can cling on and take the first non-Red Bull win since 2022. Russell straight off into the wall. We haven't seen exactly how it happened. It was in the background of the shot. We'll hope to get another look at it, but here he is on the radio. Clear frustration there from George Russell, but with only 2 corners left to go, 1 car in the wall at the end, but it's Carlos Sainz and Ferrari who achieve the unthinkable and win the Singapore Grand Prix and makes it Lando Norris comes home in second for McLaren, and Lewis Hamilton for Mercedes rounds out the podium. The Ferrari team roar. Charles Leclerc will just about pit Max Verstappen to the line in fourth. Verstappen salvages something from 11th and gets up into fifth. Gasly will come home in sixth. Piastri, Perez gets into the points. Liam Lawson will score his first points in Formula One in ninth, and Kevin Magnussen will clean up the final points for that Haas. But what a finish, Alice Powell.
A great finish. We'll hear from the winner.
And P1, baby, P1.
Alfred! Ricky!
What a mega job you did there. What a smart race.
You know what? This is my first smooth operation in Ferrari. Smooth operator.
Do you know what? I don't think he knew that was the checkered flag, because he set off way into the distance as battles still go on between Fernando Alonso and Logan Sargent. They're side by side coming to the final corner. Logan just stays ahead, but I'm not sure he thought it was last lap, because he did pull over to the pit wall and he actually streamed way ahead of those two behind him. He was so focused on keeping them behind. But Carlos Sainz, a great job, a great piece of driving. He controlled the race.
Let's go!
Well done.
Oh! I hit the wall.
Okay, just bring it back carefully. Bring it back carefully. I don't know, but P2.
Let's go.
And what a grandstand finish it was. 4 different drivers, 3 different teams in the fight for that win. In the end, Carlos Sainz for the Ferrari team played the strategic move and held on for that first non-Red Bull win, his second in his career. Lando Norris came home second, and in third place it was Lewis Hamilton, who was behind his teammate, but George Russell found the wall on the very last lap and went hurtling into it. We've heard him on the radio, he is okay, but that has put him out. But what a finish. Carlos Sainz, a race winner in Formula One in 2023. Didn't think we'd be saying that this year.
Mega job, boys. Mega job. Such good pace at the end there.
Yeah, mate, you look super strong.
Yeah.
Great work by everyone.
That was Lewis Hamilton just on the radio as the top 3 come into Parc Fermé. Rosanna, what an end to that Grand Prix.
Wowee, the pit lane has been flooded by fans rushing in to get a glimpse. Phones held high, everybody trying to capture the moment. You can hear the fireworks going off, still going off since the checkered flag was taken by Carlos Sainz. Smoke in the air, mechanics running with equipment down the pit lane, and I'm just having a little look at the Ferrari pit wall. What a moment for the Scuderia. Still more fireworks in the air, and people now with the Italian flag and the Ferrari flag around Parc Fermé to welcome a new race winner in 2023, Carlos Sainz, getting out of his car, getting ready to celebrate with his team. He stands on the top of his Ferrari, crouching at first, shaking his hand, and then fists and fingers raised to the sky and cheering all around in Parc Fermé. He jumps into the arms of his team. What a moment. He changed something, I think, in the summer holidays, and it has given him this confidence with the car. What a moment. Carlos Sainz taking the win in Singapore.
Is this the moment where we say Ferrari have a new number 1 man?
I would probably say not so much. I mean, he's definitely up there. He's definitely up. He's challenging Charles. Charles comes over to congratulate him. Lando's there as well. Big hugs between those 2 drivers. I wouldn't say they've got a new number 1, but it's certainly getting close. You know, he's been on the front foot compared to his teammate these past couple of races, and I have to say, I know he's won a race already, and that was the British Grand Prix, but this is probably his best drive so far, because he was under great pressure. Okay, it's hard to overtake round this track, but you've got to withstand that amount of pressure driving in between the walls on these streets of a hot Singapore, and he did it. His front tyres were gone by the end, and that was clever play there to backing them up and building that DRS train. And look what happened. It caused chaos behind them, and George Russell slipped into that trap and ended up going into the barrier. He's out of his car. We just see him on our screens getting into the medical car. I think he's all right. More just hugely frustrated, and his pride really took a dent there, but he went all out, didn't he? And Mercedes did that to try and get the win.
And we've not seen any onboard from that crash with George Russell, just so you know. So we've only seen it happen in the background of a shot where he just hurtled straight on at turn 10, didn't turn in left. So still not entirely sure the reasoning for that. Was it driver error, or was there something wrong with the car? But as Sainz and Norris, great friends off the track, show each other that respect and friendship, smiling, hugging all the way. Another hard-earned drive from Carlos Sainz, and a smart drive as well, as Ferrari end Red Bull's record streak of 15 consecutive wins. Rosanna, can you give us some more information on what happened to George Russell?
Yeah, just trying too hard, tried to open up the corner too much, and then puncture on both right tyres. So game over for George Russell after what was promising to be such a great finish for the Mercedes driver.
Well, let's hear from our race winner. He's here with David Coulthard.
Carlos Sainz, your second Grand Prix victory, and I have to say, what strategically brilliant racing you had there. You did one stop, your tyres were gone at the end, but you did it under the heat of Singapore.
Yeah, an incredible feeling, an incredible weekend. I want to thank everyone in Ferrari for making this huge effort to turn around and manage to win this season after a tricky beginning, but now we nailed the weekend, we nailed the race, we did everything that we had to do, we did it perfect, and we brought home a P1 that I'm sure all Italy, all Ferrari is going to be proud and happy today.
I don't know what you were doing in the summer break, but since you came back, your performances, you can see the hunger and desire. You've been beautifully rewarded with that victory here today. But it was like a chess match. You were very strategic in the beginning, and then in the end, you had to push 100%.
Yeah, it was all about giving our limitations with tire wear and degradation, all about managing the beginning of the stints to make sure I made it to the target laps that we wanted to do in each compound. Obviously, a safety car forced us to pit even earlier than we wanted, and I knew it was going to be a long stint on hard. I had to keep him slowing down, to don't give him a safety car or a medium tire opportunity, and it worked to perfection. It was just quite tight at the end, but we gave Lando a bit of DRS to help him, and in the end we made it P1.
See, I find that incredible that you're thinking, I'm going to help Lando so he then isn't under pressure from the Mercedes. Other than the obvious, the fact that you were being hunted down in the last few laps, was there any scary moments in that Grand Prix for you?
Well, I felt under control, to be honest. I always felt like I had the headspace and the pace in hand to do whatever I wanted to do. I'm not going to lie, you're under pressure and you obviously are very close to making any kind of mistake, but I felt under control. I felt like I could manage well, and we brought it home. That was the best feeling, over the moon right now.
Well, brilliant victory, congratulations.
Thank you.
Lando, you've equaled your best results. You're getting closer to that first victory, but after what was the usual Singapore madness with the safety cars and the uncertainty on the tyres, you, like Carlos, only did one stop. It was a hard race at the end there.
It was, but Carlos was very generous. Carlos was very generous trying to help me get DRS. It helped my race and also helped his. So it was tough. We knew it was going to be tough as soon as the Mercedes boxed, especially with only a couple of cars for them to overtake. But we're on the podium, P2, we held them off. We did everything we needed to do and more. So super happy.
We saw George Russell was pushing hard and was being pushed hard by his teammate, and in the end he clipped the wall and went out of the Grand Prix. That was really the last bit of pressure you had.
I know, I hit the wall at the same lap, the last lap, same place.
You hit the wall?
I did the same, so I think he copied me and just did it even worse. So no, I feel for him. He fought a tough race. He was probably one of the quickest out. He was the quickest today, I would say. So it helped me a bit. The last couple of corners I could chill just a little bit more, but good points for the whole team as well with Oscar there. But everyone, Carlos, Charles, Lewis and George, we all pushed each other the whole way, so it was stressful, but it paid off.
Now, it would seem an obvious question under the heat of Singapore, but put us in the cockpit. Physically, how tough was that Grand Prix?
I'm good to go. Do it again.
Yes. Okay, we believe you. Right, Lewis Hamilton, congratulations. Third place, not the ultimate result you want, but brilliant comeback strategically at the end. This is your 196th podium and your 7th here in Singapore. We saw you battle hard with your teammate. We heard you on the radio saying, tell George to hurry up. And then, unfortunately, he clipped the wall.
Yeah, well, firstly, congratulations to Carlos and Lando. They did a great job today. Their strategy worked. We rolled the dice this weekend. We went on with a different amount of tyres into qualifying with the option to be able to do what we've done today. I felt like it was a two-stop, but I think that the team did an amazing job today to really get us back up there. It's a bit of a shame the first corner, but nonetheless, I just kept my head down, kept pushing. And of course, extremely unfortunate for George. We were pushing so hard to catch these guys, and our tyres were so hot. But I know he'll bounce back. He's been phenomenal all weekend.
We saw you sitting just before coming up to the interview. This is a hard race, but that's the way you love it.
Yeah, this is how it should be. It's incredibly hot. I think I only lost 2 kilos today, so it's not so bad.
Well, I'm going to let you go and enjoy the cooling champagne of the podium. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well. How about that then? It was a bit of a slow burner to start with, wasn't it, Alice? But safety car, virtual safety car, Russell's new mediums coming alive. And here we go. This is the sound then of George Russell. And what exactly happened on the run to turn 10, Alice? So final lap.
Yeah, so he's trying so hard. Oh, no. So he clips the wall on the right-hand side. That's a huge error to do, and that's instantly then broke the steering. And that is a hot race. I said it already, it's a hot, long race. As we're seeing some fans' reactions going, no, they're just as shocked as we were sat here in the commentary box. And that's there's no one else to blame there apart from George. Final lap of the race, he was clearly looking too much at the apex, forgot how wide his Mercedes was, and just clipped the entry barrier, which does sort of fork out. You are braking at a slight angle there, and 61 laps he went past without touching it. And the final one, unfortunately, he clips it.
Well, Lando Norris in the McLaren was the car in front of George Russell, and he just said there to David Coulthard that he also did hit the wall in that part, but Russell obviously hit it a bit harder. Let's hear from his boss, Andrea Stella, who's chatting with Rosanna.
Andrea, congratulations. A fairly anonymous race for Lando to start with, but it all came good at the end.
Yeah, it was quite tense, and a couple of events during the race gave us an opportunity to end up on the podium. Close call at the virtual safety car, staying out, pitting. For Mercedes it was easy because they had another set of medium, so I think for them was a straightforward call. It worked, but it could have not worked. And good collaboration between Lando and Carlos also, with Carlos making sure that Lando had the DRS, so to keep the two Mercedes behind. Great work by everyone trackside, but let me take the chance to thank everyone at the factory, the whole team that made these upgrades possible, and it's thanks to that today we are going to celebrate the podium.
Lando said he had a little bit of a touch with the wall. Was that a scary moment for you guys on the pit wall?
It was scary, plus we were seeing him in the straight weaving a bit. Hopefully it was just to check that everything was okay. So yeah, it added to the tension, but ultimately it was all right. So we are enjoying this good result.
And of course this upgrade obviously bringing you a podium. Oscar gets it next weekend, so things are looking even better for McLaren at the moment.
On the paper Suzuka should be a track that should suit our car better. But this Formula One seems to be quite unpredictable, so we will discover in a few days.